Chapter 797. Second senior brother's smile was gentle, and there was warmth within it. It was a memory from a long time ago that Su Ming had not seen for a very, very long time. At that moment, when he saw his second senior brother's gentle smile once again and lifted his head so that sunlight could shine on the side of his face, all of these things made Su Ming cry even more. The scenes from the ninth summit, the man who was as gentle as a flower in the past, the second senior brother who had smiled at him under the sun while standing among the grass and flowers on the ground, and the face that still had the same smile on even though he was being tortured in the ball of light, all of these scenes overlapped with each other at that instant. The howling sword aura came charging towards Su Ming with loud booming sounds. In the span of a breath, it charged towards him, and right behind it were nearly 10,000 small blood-red swords that came charging towards him like rain. They stirred up violent gusts of wind that swept through the area, and the sharp sword glares looked as if they wanted to cut through the air. Right at the instant they were about to close in on Su Ming, tears fell from Su Ming's eyes. He lifted his head swiftly and glared at the near 10,000 Great Leaf Immortal Sect disciples in the sky. At that moment, there was no longer any power that could stop Su Ming's slaughter. The killing sword in his right hand let out a bloodthirsty and excited sword whistle. At the instant Su Ming lifted it, he swiftly slashed towards the sky. The world roared under that one slash. The incoming gigantic sword aura instantly shattered into pieces, and even the small blood-red swords behind it were all reduced to dust by Su Ming's one slash. At the same time, all the snow floating in the world gathered together and charged towards the sword rune in the sky from all directions. Su Ming would definitely not spare these Great Leaf Immortal Sect disciples. But the most important thing right then was not to kill them, but to cut all the chains around his second senior brother. Su Ming moved, and the killing sword in his hand swiftly cut the second chain. A piercing sound of metal crashing against stone reverberated in the air, and Su Ming was sent tumbling backwards by the rebound. We took a few steps back, the second chain instantly shattered. Su Ming did not stop. He took a step forward, and the presence of life cultivation realm circulated in his body with a bang. All his power erupted from his body, and with another slash, the third, fourth, and fifth chains were all cut down by Su Ming in his madness. As the chains shattered one by one, the figure of the second senior brother in the ball of light rapidly condensed from a mist. After the fifth chain shattered, the second senior brother in the ball of light had completely condensed his body. However, his face was still pale, and his body gave off a deep sense of weakness. He had been tortured by the formation over the years and was on the verge of death. The smile remained on his face. Even if he was incredibly weak at that moment, he still maintained that smile as he looked at Su Ming and his youngest junior brother. He was happy because he saw Su Ming. He was proud because he noticed Su Ming's strength and because Su Ming was his youngest junior brother. "Little junior brother, you've grown up," second senior brother said softly, his voice faintly echoing through the sphere of light. Su Ming looked at his second senior brother. Memories continuously surfaced in his head. Everything in the past had become precious to Su Ming, and right then, they had turned into the chill that made him want to kill. However, those chains were definitely not ordinary items. Once he cut down 5 of them, the rebound Su Ming had to endure was so great that it practically surged into the sky, causing him to open his mouth and cough up a mouthful of blood. However, determination and resolution appeared in his eyes, and he swiftly slashed down on the final chain. That determined gaze made it seem as if even if there was a mountain of blades, a sea of fire, or a supreme, murderous aura before him, he would still move forward without any hesitation. That determined look on his face was a form of protection that came from the depths of his heart. "In the past, you protected me. Today, I will protect you, second senior brother." At the instant he slashed down, the near 10,000 Great Leaf Immortal Sect disciples in the sky looked as if the entire sky was about to be frozen due to the endless snow falling from the sky. But right at the instant it was frozen, a low roar reverberated in the sky. "Blood sacrifice! The person who roared was someone Su Ming was familiar with. It was Qin Xin's father from Dark Mountain, Chun Long, the tribe leader of Dark Mountain tribe. Perhaps he should be Qin Long now. As he let out a low growl, the eyes of the close to 10,000 Great Leaf Immortal Sect disciples, who were rapidly being sealed in ice and had their life force draining away, instantly turned bloodshot. There was no longer any consciousness in their eyes. Instead, there was a crack at the center of their brows. At the instant that crack appeared, a large amount of blood gushed out along with shards of ice. As they did so, the near 10,000 Great Leaf Immortal Sect disciples rapidly withered away. In the blink of an eye, they turned into skeletons, turning into ice sculptures that fell from midair. Their deaths were not caused by Su Ming. In truth, at the instant he used his divine ability to freeze them, they had already turned into corpses. What killed them was Great Leaf Immortal Sect's arts and divine abilities, the sword rune they had gathered together, and Qin Long was the one who had activated the blood sacrifice. The blood that filled the sky covered the entire sky at that instant. As it tumbled about, it gathered together to form a huge sword of 10,000 feet. That sword swept through the sky and sliced through the air towards Su Ming. It was difficult to describe the speed at which the sword cut down. It looked as if it was still in the sky, but in truth, it was already less than 100 feet away from Su Ming. That extreme speed surpassed that of the wind and sliced through the air, bringing with it a terrifying presence that wanted to destroy all the lives that tried to block its path. Su Ming's sword was cutting down on the sixth chain at that moment. As the blood-red sword behind him whistled through the air, Su Ming's pupils shrank, but he did not hesitate. The sword in his hand swiftly cut down on the sixth chain, and a clear bang reverberated in the air. The chain instantly shattered. However, a powerful rebound surged into Su Ming's body, causing him to take a few steps back and crash into the blood-red sword with a bang. At the instant they crashed into each other, a nine-colored light erupted from Su Ming's body. That nine-colored light was formed by the five-direction seal, and it surrounded Su Ming, the ball of light, and his second senior brother before crashing into the blood-red sword. Loud booming sounds that surged into the sky and shook the earth reverberated in the air. As they reverberated in the air, the screen of light formed by Su Ming's five-direction seal crumbled layer by layer before gathering together again. Cracks appeared on the ground beneath him, then shattered and spread out. In the blink of an eye, the ground within a circular area of 100 lis under Su Ming's feet crumbled and sank. The nine-colored screen of light shattered at that instant, and a huge wave of impact surged into it. Without any hesitation, Su Ming took a step forward and stood outside the ball of light, right before his second senior brother. With his own body, he blocked the blood-red sword aura that surged into him. At the same time, the moment the blood-red sword cut into the nine-colored screen of light, cracks appeared on the nine-colored screen of light, and in the midst of the booming sounds and the rebound, it instantly shattered, turning into an endless amount of blood-red shards that tumbled backwards. The booming sounds turned into lingering echoes that gradually faded away. Dust flew into the air and slowly sank down. When the world became clear once again, Su Ming coughed out blood. The ball of light behind him distorted, but his second senior brother was not injured in the slightest. Since most of the blood-red sword aura had been withstood by Su Ming, not much of it had entered the ball of light. With the protection provided by the ball of light, second senior brother did not even feel a hint of that blood-red sword aura. However, second senior brother had seen Su Ming using his body to protect his second senior brother clearly. The smile remained on his face, and within that smile was warmth, sentimentality, and the love between brothers. There was no need for him to thank Su Ming for this, because if second senior brother was in his place, he would have done the same thing without any hesitation to protect his junior brother. In the sky, as the shards of the blood-red sword tumbled backwards, they suddenly gathered together once again in midair and turned into a long sword. However, this time, it was not 10,000 feet long, but normal size. At the same time, a low voice reverberated in the area. Soul ejection, blood sacrifice, and soul ejection. This was the name of Great Leaf Immortal Sect's 10,000 people sword rune. Blood sacrifice was the act of sacrificing all the people in the rune to turn it into an attack that could destroy the sky and earth. And soul ejection was an even stronger attack if the blood sacrifice could not kill the enemy. At the instant Shenlong said those two words, his body shuddered and turned into ashes. A wisp of his soul spread out from his disappearing body. At the same time, the souls of the near 10,000 Great Leaf Immortal Sect members who had been killed by the rune appeared in the sky. They were filled with confusion and absent-mindedness, and these souls swiftly gathered together to form a black figure. That figure was 30 feet tall. It had 2 heads, but only 1 arm. At that moment, it lifted its arm and seized the blood-red sword. Then, one of its heads turned towards the sky, and the other towards the ground. Both of them let out roars that shook the sky and earth. Second senior brother, do you want to personally kill this ferocious spirit formed by the souls of Great Leaf Immortal Sect? Su Ming wiped off the blood at the corners of his mouth and cast a glance at the roaring 2-headed figure in the sky, then looked towards his second senior brother. That's good. As second senior brother smiled faintly, Su Ming swung the sword in his hand and cut down on the ball of light. Immediately, the ball of light started trembling violently, distorting and crumbling. At the instant it crumbled, second senior brother, who had regained his complete body, walked out weakly. As he walked out, patches of green grass immediately sprouted from the ground that had been turned into ruins under his feet. When second senior brother arrived beside Su Ming, his face was still pale. That feeling of weakness made Su Ming crouch down and carry his second senior brother on his back. Second senior brother, let's fight against this 2-headed ferocious spirit. Su Ming lifted his head and took a step towards the sky with his second senior brother on his back. At the instant he did so, the 2-headed ferocious spirit held the blood-red sword in its hands, and both of its heads looked towards Su Ming at the same time. As it roared, it turned into a long arc and charged towards him. Both sides charged out from the sky and earth like 2 shooting stars. They did not dodge in midair and crashed into each other with loud bangs. With just one strike, the victor would be decided. At that moment, there was a thin layer of clouds indistinctly visible in the sky. Even the tremors in the sky could not chase it away. At most, it could not be seen. In that layer of clouds was a beautiful girl who was munching on melon seeds. There was a pained expression on her face as she let out a long sigh. I've lost. I've really lost this time. This Su Ming has grown so quickly. If I had known this would happen, I would have extorted more from that old coot. As the girl regretted her decision, there was a yellow mutt lying beside her, yawning comfortably. Beside the mutt were 2 people with distressed looks on their faces. One of them was the bald crane, and the other was Chin Chun. They were scratching the mutt's itch. To be continued. If you like this work, please come Chidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 798. This strike was the blood sacrifice for the return of the soul. The wind and clouds stirred, and the blood sword in the 2-headed body moved like a shooting star, causing the ground to rumble. During that instant, it was as if the sky and the earth had crashed into each other. The ripples stirred up, turned into 2 arcs of impact, causing the scene to look like an incredibly beautiful sight in the land of berserkers from the distance. It was enough to make anyone's expression change and look sideways. During the impact, second senior brother let out a weak but hearty laugh while on Su Ming's back. As he laughed, green grass instantly spread out from the shattered ground. As waves of fragrance spread out, a feminine yet tenacious presence spread out from second senior brother's body and surrounded Su Ming. Su Ming was like a sharp sword that had been drawn out of its sheath. With second senior brother on his back, he crashed into the body that was charging towards him through the blood sacrifice for the return of the soul in the sky. This was a clash between the sky and the earth. This was a clash between 2 forces that could be said to be at the pinnacle of power in the land of berserkers. As loud booming sounds reverberated in the air and spread out, an endless amount of dimensional cracks appeared in the sky. As the ground shattered, it turned into ashes. A violent gust of wind with a powerful impact was sweeping madly through the area with Su Ming as its center. It was like a raging wave that had no end in sight. Su Ming coughed up a mouthful of blood and was forced back 100-something feet. However, a large amount of green immediately filled his body at that instant. That was the manifestation of second senior brother's power. As for the two-headed body, one of its heads crumbled at that instant. Its body tumbled backwards with a loud bang, and the blood sword in its hand also became slightly duller. Su Ming lifted his head swiftly. Before he even stopped moving, he rushed out once again. The killing sword in his hand shone, and he charged towards the one-headed great leaf immortal sect master. As the one-headed body roared, the two of them clashed against each other once again. He did not use any divine abilities or arts. Su Ming used a killing sword and executed the four sword styles. He drew long arcs in the air, and after a moment, an even louder bang rang out, and a head flew into the air. It was pierced through by Su Ming's sword, and the head exploded. The body formed by the rune from Great Leaf Immortal Sect that had lost all its heads was swiftly retreating as it shuddered. At the spot where the head had been, there were two tumors squirming rapidly, as if they were about to grow another head. Those who provoke the ninth summit will be killed. Blood trickled out of the corners of Su Ming's mouth, but the murderous aura on his face was still threatening. He took a step forward and caught up to the retreating body. The killing sword in his hand sliced down, and a gigantic left arm flew up before it crumbled. Second senior brother's laughter reverberated in the air. His laughter contained the venting of all the repressed feelings he had felt over the years. His voice also rang out amidst his laughter. Youngest junior brother, you're right. Those who provoke even a single plant in the ninth summit will be killed. As second senior brother spoke, Su Ming took a step forward once again and closed in on the retreating body formed by the rune. He swung the blood-red sword in his hand, and the body's right leg was swiftly separated from its body. Those who provoke the ninth summit's disciples will have their entire family killed. Su Ming's freezing voice spread out. When he took a step forward, he leaped forward and lifted the killing sword in his hand. As killing intent erupted from his eyes, he cut down violently towards the body formed by the rune from Great Leaf Immortal Sect. As second senior brother laughed, a large amount of green light flowed through Su Ming's body and gathered on the killing sword in his hand. That slash no longer contained Su Ming's power alone, but his weakened second senior brother had also been added to it. At the instant the sword slashed down, the body formed by the rune, which had lost its two heads, left arm, and right leg, swiftly lifted its right hand and placed the blood-red sword horizontally before itself to fight against the slashes from Su Ming and his second senior brother's killing swords. A loud bang rang in the air. As Su Ming let out a cold harumph and second senior brother laughed, the killing sword crashed into the blood sword, and it immediately shattered into pieces. The killing sword pierced through the blood sword and cut into the body of the rune, cutting through its flesh. When it pierced through, it cut the body of the rune in half. A shrill scream that could only be heard by souls rang out from the body of the rune. The two halves of the rune exploded, and the countless vengeful souls inside tumbled out in all directions as they let out shrill screams of pain. If anyone looked towards the sky from the ground, they would be able to see this scene spreading out like fog, and that fog was filled with the souls of Great Leaf Immortal Sect. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. Just as he was about to kill the rune, second senior brother on his back suddenly spoke. Youngest junior brother, don't kill. As he spoke, second senior brother leaped up and walked out from Su Ming's back. With a single move in midair, he turned into a gigantic phantom. It was a gigantic creature that had two horns on its head and was 100 feet tall. Its entire body was dark green in color. As his phantom appeared, second senior brother opened his mouth and sucked in a sharp breath in the direction of the Great Leaf Immortal Sect's souls, tumbling backwards. As he did so, those souls let out shrill screams and terror appeared on their faces, but they could not stop themselves from charging towards second senior brother. In the blink of an eye, they were all swallowed by second senior brother. When all the souls of Great Leaf Immortal Sect in the sky were devoured by second senior brother, his body grew exponentially from its original size of 100 feet. A bizarre air spread out from that nearly 200 feet tall ghost in midair. He slowly turned his head around and looked towards Su Ming. Even though he had a ferocious appearance and a ghastly black aura was spreading out from all over his body, making him look like a malicious spirit, when he looked towards Su Ming, a smile appeared on his face. It was second senior brother's smile. As he smiled, he lifted his head and let the sun shine on the side of his face, making him look incredibly comfortable. This place has suppressed me for many years and even used my body as a tool to maintain the sex cultivation. It continuously extracted my power. It was a very painful experience. This is not good. As he spoke, second senior brother lifted his right hand and looked at it. With a gentle smile on his face, he slowly brought it down on the ground. During that instant, even if the entire land had crumbled into powder and there was a gigantic pit on the ground, a large amount of green swiftly filled the area. It was an endless amount of grass, flowers, and trees growing madly. In the blink of an eye, the entire land that was once Great Leaf Immortal Sect turned into a forest filled with flowers, grass, and lush trees. A circular area of nearly 10,000 leagues was filled with this sort of forest. Waves of fresh air spread out. Second senior brother sucked in a deep breath, and his body slowly shrank until he eventually turned back into the gentle man who looked like a flower. He was dressed in white and stood before Su Ming with a faint smile on his face. Su Ming looked at his second senior brother, at the smile that remained in his memories. To him, it did not matter whether his second senior brother was a human or a ghost. He was still his second senior brother. Second senior brother. A smile appeared on Su Ming's face. It was a smile that had not appeared on his face for a long time. It came from the bottom of his heart, and he held nothing back. Youngest junior brother, it's been hard on you during this period of time. I didn't manage to find Master here, but I did find some clues. For some unknown reason and with some unknown method, Master should have left the land of berserkers, second senior brother said softly. His face was still slightly pale. Clearly, the injuries Great Leaf Immortal Sect had inflicted on him over the years could not be healed quickly. Right now, we're the only ones left. I asked Hu Zi to stay in the Ninth Summit. Have you gone back? Su Ming nodded. Just as he was about to speak, he suddenly frowned and lifted his head to look at the sky. His eyes gradually narrowed. A glint appeared in second senior brother's eyes, and he lifted his head as well. At that moment, the sky might have seemed to be devoid of clouds, but in truth, there was still a layer of clouds hidden in the sky. The beautiful girl who was munching on melon seeds widened her eyes and watched the entire process of Su Ming fighting against the two-headed soul of return. After some time, she patted her slightly puffed-up chest and let out a deep sigh. What a huge loss! The girl lifted her hand and scratched the head of the mutt beside her. The mutt was in pain, but did not dare say anything. It had heard of the girl's infamy when it was in the Emperor of Abyss World. She was an unreasonable existence that could cause headaches to many of the living beings in the Emperor of Abyss World. It had been ravaged on the way here, and even though this matter clearly had nothing to do with it, it still could not escape from her evil clutches. In pain, the mutt glared at the bald crane and Qian Chun, then growled, scaring the bald crane so much that it quickly put on a fawning expression. Qian Chun also shuddered. Yet almost at the moment the bald crane put on that fawning expression, the mutt bit the bald crane's body. When it saw the bald crane's expression change and the look of pain on its face, the mutt felt slightly more balanced. Qian Chen's shivers grew stronger, and terror appeared in his eyes. He saw the beautiful girl bullying the mutt, and then the mutt bullying the bald crane, and as it shuddered, the bald crane lifted its head and glared at Qian Chen fiercely. Suddenly, it lifted its hand and slapped Qian Chen's head. Due to the pain from the mutt's bite, the bald crane slapped Qian Chen a few times in succession. Only when pain also appeared on Qian Chen's face did the bald crane regain its composure. Qian Chen put on a long face. Once he looked around, he simply could not find anyone for him to vent his anger on or bully, which was why he lowered his head and nearly cried. Just as the people on the cloud were bullying each other, Su Ming's cold voice traveled forth slowly from below. "Sir, you've been following me all this time. How much longer are you going to continue hiding?" Su Ming's voice traveled forth, and when it landed in Qian Chen's ears, he became so excited that he felt as if he had just heard the voice of his family. As for the bald crane, a thought appeared in its head. The mutt rolled its eyes. Just as it was about to look over, the girl by its side stood up and placed her hands behind her back. She looked incredibly adorable, but the surprise on her face showed that she had not expected that Su Ming would be able to notice her existence. Hence, she let out a few light coughs, and with that beautiful, adorable, and even slightly naive look of a bunny, she walked out of the cloud that was hidden in the sky, begging for recommendation votes, begging for monthly votes. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 799. It was a very unforgettable scene, and it was a beautiful girl with her hands behind her back. Her beautiful body was revealed in the sky, and with a slightly bashful blush, she walked down from the sky with light steps. Her waist was very thin, and her light green long dress hid her curvaceous body. There was a light red star pattern embroidered on her sleeves, and there were a few auspicious clouds drawn by silver threads. Her eyes were lively and bashful, as if they were filled with spring water. As they moved, the crystalline pearls hanging from the phoenix hairpin on her head swayed slightly. The pearls shone with a dazzling brilliance under the sun, but they could not cover up the girl's beauty. Instead, they served as a contrast to her beauty, causing her to give off a breathtaking feeling. Her delicate dimples were like those of flower. When she walked over, the wind blew against her hair, causing her to lift her right hand behind her back. Her fingers were as beautiful as peeling off the root of an onion. Her action of pulling up her hair and the bashful look in her eyes were enough to move people's hearts and souls. "Yu Xian, greet big brother Su." The beautiful girl gradually got closer. When she was 100-something feet away from Su Ming, she bowed slightly, and a faint fragrance wafted into the air, causing all those who smelled it to feel as if their hearts were seeping into their hearts. Behind the girl was a yellow mutt. It was running and bouncing behind her, and its tongue was sticking out with saliva. Behind the mutt was the excited Qianshun. He looked as if he was about to cry, and tears welled up in his eyes as he stared at Su Ming. There was also the old man who was the bald crane, and even the way it walked was a little sleazy. It was rubbing its hands together, and even though there was not a hint of elegance about it, it was pretending to be relaxed and had the air of an immortal. This, and the way it walked, formed a visual impact. This was definitely not something a mortal could understand. This might be the first time Su Ming saw the old man, who was the bald crane, but the thick, sleazy air about the old man and the sanctimonious look on his face was something that Su Ming did not even need to guess. There was no other person in the entire land of berserkers who could fuse these complicated feelings into one and still be pleased with themselves. As for the mutt, a barely noticeable glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes when he looked at it, and he shifted his gaze to look at the girl. It had to be said that she could be said to be one of the most beautiful women Su Ming had ever seen in his memories. It did not matter whether it was her appearance, temperament, or her bashfulness. There were no women who could compare to her. Yet for some unknown reason, the moment Su Ming saw the woman, he had a feeling that there were sharp spikes hidden on her body. If he touched her carelessly, he would immediately be pierced by those spikes. And those spikes seemed to contain poison that could kill. Su Ming was looking at the girl, and she was also sizing him up. When their gazes met in midair, the girl smiled bashfully and lowered her head, naturally avoiding Su Ming's gaze. Second senior brother let out a fake cough beside Su Ming. He lifted his head and instinctively turned the side of his face towards the sun. Then, as if he felt that something was wrong, he let out another fake cough and gave the girl a gentle smile. "Little girl, when are you going to marry my youngest junior brother?" His words were too sudden, and the meaning behind his words was also too abrupt. This was a way of speaking that did not follow common sense. The moment he said those words, not only was Su Ming stunned, the girl who was pretending to be shy also widened her eyes, and the bashfulness on her face instantly disappeared. Even the mutt by her side forgot to retract its tongue once it opened its mouth, and a large amount of saliva fell out. The bald crane sucked in a sharp breath and stared at Su Ming's second senior brother, feeling as if it had run into a powerful senior. As for Qian Shun, he was completely dumbfounded. In that instant, the surroundings fell silent. Only second senior brother was there, smiling warmly. He looked completely harmless. The way he let the sunlight shine on the side of his face, and the way he adjusted his position from time to time, caused the entire place to fall silent for a long time. Second senior brother, I don't know her. Su Ming smiled wryly and instinctively pinched the center of his brows. Nonsense. You don't know her, so how could she know what your surname is? Youngest junior brother, this is an important matter of your life. When you left the 9th summit in the past, Master specifically called me, Hu Zi, and your eldest senior brother together to discuss your marriage for 3 days and 3 nights. Now that the heavens have opened their eyes, I didn't expect that youngest junior brother would be so capable that such a beautiful girl would take the initiative to chase after you. I pity your second senior brother. I'm so handsome, so charming, so... That's supposed to describe a woman, right? Second senior brother blinked. Second senior brother. I don't know him either. The beautiful girl widened her eyes and stared at second senior brother blankly for some time before she quickly spoke up. She even instinctively took a few steps back. She felt that Su Ming's second senior brother was simply too terrifying. He was even more terrifying than the Emperor of Abyss. The Emperor of Abyss had also asked someone to act as a matchmaker for her to marry the third prince. But Su Ming's second senior brother had said this the first time they met, and he even spoke as if it was only natural. This caused the girl to be unable to figure out what he was thinking. This manner of speaking that did not follow common sense caused Su Ming to smile wryly, and the girl to instinctively move back. However, the bald crane's eyes shone brightly, and it stared at second senior brother with an almost worshipful gaze while mumbling non-stop in its heart. I've learned it. Darn it all. So you can speak like this? I met a master today. Looks like I'll have to learn this way of speaking in the future. This is what it means to be a master. This is what it means to be unfathomable. This is an even higher realm of scaring people. So you really didn't know him? That's fine. Don't you know him now? Lass, look at my youngest junior brother. He's so handsome, so charming, so... In any case, look at how good he is. Let's do this. Today, I'll be the witness of your marriage. From now on, you will be his wife, second senior brother said gently. He might have spoken a lot, but he spoke at a moderate pace, and a sacred light shone faintly in his eyes. Let's do this. Lass, you're Yuxian, right? You don't have to bring a lot of dowry. You could just bring this mud over. I think it's pretty good. It could be used as a guard. Also, if you have any sisters, remember to introduce them to me. Second senior brother looked at the mutt as if he was looking at something that belonged to him. In the face of second senior brother's gaze, the mutt shuddered and quickly took a few steps back. It bared its teeth at second senior brother and started growling. Sir, why have you been following me all this time? Su Ming laughed wryly in his heart and simply allowed second senior brother to continue persuading him. He knew that second senior brother was not someone who would speak without thinking. He definitely had his reasons for doing this. Perhaps he had noticed something. After all, the girl's method of hiding herself was incredibly strange. Su Ming had not noticed her a long time ago, but when he was fighting against the body formed by the rune just now, he had noticed that there was a region in the sky that was slightly abnormal. There was a faint, familiar ripple of power there. That ripple of power came from the bald crane and Qian Shun, which was why he noticed it. A thought appeared in the girl's head in the face of Su Ming's words. The bashfulness and the noble air around her disappeared as second senior brother continued speaking nonstop. At that moment, there was a mischievous air about the girl. With every single blink of her large, sparkling eyes, a thought would appear in her head. She was still a stunning beauty, but she looked more like a little fox than anything else. Su Ming frowned. The feeling that there were thorns hidden in her body was becoming stronger, and the girl's presence was incredibly strange. It was not the power of an immortal, neither was it the chi of a berserker. Instead, there was a ripple of power that was slightly similar to the aura of death, but it was different. That ripple of power even attracted Su Ming's soul, as if some of it was about to spread out and charge towards the girl. This strange thing made Su Ming incredibly wary. He cast the girl a profound glance, but did not continue asking her how she knew about him. Instead, he cast his gaze towards Qian Shun and the bald crane. "Come back." Su Ming let out a cold harumph. Qian Shun immediately became excited. After a moment of hesitation, he quickly turned into a long arm from the girl and the mutt side and flew to Su Ming's side. His eyes were filled with tears, and he nearly tugged at Su Ming's sleeve to cry loudly. It was a telling sign just how wretched the torture he had gone through over the past few days had been. A person who originally could not fly in this place had learned how to fly. When the bald crane saw that Qian Shun had left safely, it also took a few stealthy steps forward and increased its speed swiftly to charge towards Su Ming. Once it arrived beside him, it let out a huge sigh of relief in its heart, and its smug and arrogant demeanor returned. "Second senior brother, let's go." Su Ming looked towards his second senior brother and moved back slowly. The girl gave him an incredibly strange feeling, and even with Su Ming's current level of cultivation, he could still vaguely sense an incredibly powerful, mighty pressure contained within the mutt's body. At that moment, there were hundreds of long arcs charging towards Su Ming from behind. They were the fated kin who had been waiting outside. Once they saw Great Leaf Immortal Sects collapse, they were worried about Su Ming, which was why they rushed over. "You? What else could I be doing? That's right, I did follow you all the way here, but if it wasn't for me, you wouldn't have been able to leave so easily when you fought against Di Tian in the Dead Sea. If it wasn't for me, you would have died a long time ago." No one knew what sort of thoughts had appeared in the girl's mind, but her voice was incredibly clear when she looked at Su Ming and spoke angrily. You ungrateful bastard." When Su Ming heard her words, a focused glint appeared in his eyes. "Haha, so that's how it is. You said you didn't know him just now. Miss Yu Xian, I can tell that you've long since fallen in love with my youngest junior brother. Oh well, this marriage is set." Second senior brother smiled faintly and narrowed his eyes as he looked towards the girl. "I'll listen to you, second senior brother." Once the girl cast a glance at Su Ming, a bashful look appeared on her face once again. She lowered her head and spoke softly, but she was mumbling smugly in her heart. "I sold Su Ming for a bad price. I have to stay by his side so that when those two old coots come, I can rip them off even more. There's no way Yu Xian, will suffer losses when I do business." Second senior brother, Su Ming smiled wryly. "Youngest junior brother, this girl isn't bad. She's really not bad." Second senior brother smiled faintly. Once he cast a glance at the mutt, he gave Su Ming a profound nod. "To be continued. If you like this work, please come a Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation." Chapter 800. The final immortal sect in Eastern Wastelands had turned into smoke and turned into a lush forest. There was a gigantic pit in the forest, and it was as if it was the only thing that could bear witness to the destruction of Great Leaf Immortal Sect. This place had always been a place with an incredibly thick spiritual aura in Eastern Wastelands. Even if it had turned into a forest, that spiritual aura was still slowly spreading out and filling the area, causing the forest to look as if it was surrounded by a layer of fog, giving off a dreamy feeling. From then on, this place would become the Fated Kin's sect in Eastern Wastelands. As the Fated Kin multiplied, they would continue growing stronger. Due to Su Ming's existence, the Fated Kin were destined to have a transcendent status among the Berserkers. It was just like the god of Shaman's temple in the land of shamans. With Su Ming's status as his kin, Fated Kin would stand above the other tribes and Berserker sects for a long period of time. No one would dare challenge their might, because they were Su Ming's Fated Kin. From now on, Great You will no longer exist. The ones who will appear in the land of berserkers will be the fated kin. They will build their own sects in the other continents to maintain the operations of the berserkers. This was Su Ming's thought. Since Great You had already been buried in the passage of time, then it would be better for it to disappear forever. The fated kin would replace the Great You of the past in a new land of berserkers, allowing the berserkers to grow stronger in this new life. Su Ming left. The fated kin who had followed him to the former Great Leaf, immortal sect, stayed in the forest. Under Nan Gonghen's lead, they would open up a unique terrain suitable for the fated kin to live in. Soon, 2 tall mountains would appear in this place. The mountain range would turn into a canyon, and the canyon would be modified to gather the ripples of Death. There would also be a large amount of enchanted vessels unique to the fated kin, such as the gigantic bow and arrow. There would also be a series of divine abilities and arts that would appear, and they would become even stronger. Similarly, a statue of Su Ming would also be carved in this place. It would become a deity statue that the fated kin worshipped every day, and it would also become the statue of the god of berserkers in the land of berserkers. Su Ming left with his second senior brother, Qian Shun, the bald crane, a mutt that would occasionally drool, and a mischievous and beautiful girl who always liked smiling. This was a very strange team. Every single time Su Ming turned his head around, he could not help but smile wryly. Over the years, he had been alone most of the time. Situations like this were very rare. In particular, the girl named Yu Xian was sitting on the dog. The dog was running around in circles while drooling. Su Ming could tell that the mutt was not supposed to be so lively. It was only acting this way because Yu Xian's small hand had grabbed the fur on its head. When she yanked it to the left, the mutt would run to the left, and when she yanked it to the right, it would immediately run to the right. As the mutt ran back and forth, Yu Xian's bell-like laughter rang out. There was joy in that laughter, as if she was carefree. However, to Su Ming, that was not carefree, but carefree. Instead, she was carefree. The bald crane did not turn into an old man this time. Instead, it had turned into a teenager, and it was asking for guidance from second senior brother with its head lowered. The man and crane walked together, and the occasional sinister cackles would come from their mouths. They looked as if they regretted not meeting each other earlier, and they seemed to have gotten along well with each other, causing a thick, sleazy air to come crashing into Su Ming's face. Su Ming rubbed the center of his brows and looked at Qian Shun, who had been following him all this while and had practically never left his side. Qian Shun had clearly been tortured to the point that he was afraid. He was afraid of the bald crane, but he was even more afraid of the mutt, and the person he was most afraid of was the girl. This was the first time he met Su Ming's second senior brother, but when he witnessed his second senior brother talking to Yu Xian and saw the bald crane looking as if it regretted not having met him sooner, he instantly shuddered. His gaze, when he looked towards his second senior brother, immediately became different, and he decided to keep a respectful distance from him. He felt that Su Ming was the only one in the group who was slightly more normal. Su Ming rubbed his brows until the center of his brows turned red. He let out a long sigh in his heart and no longer bothered himself with the people around him. Instead, he turned into a long arc and left into the distance. Xiao Huang, follow me. Yu Xian cast a glance at Su Ming's back with a grin and lifted her chin smugly. This time, she did not need to hide in the clouds to follow Su Ming. She could stay by his side openly. She might have agreed to some marriage, but she did not care about that sort of thing. Haha, before those 2 old coots come, I'll have to protect him properly. Only then will I be able to sell him for a better price. Oh well, I might have to suffer a slight loss, but I'll let Su Ming have it easy. Once those 2 old coots come, I'll leave. As for that silly boy, if he really falls in love with me, then it'll be his misfortune. Ah, I'm so outstanding, but there are always people who like me. It's quite depressing. The girl sighed delightedly and patted the dog's head. The dog's head nodded, but it didn't dare to get angry. It was not afraid of Yu Xian. It was afraid of her family. In its eyes, her entire family was a bunch of lunatics. Yu Xian was clearly feeling very smug in her heart, but as she sighed, she scratched the mutt's head. The mutt was in pain, and it looked as if it was about to cry. A complicated expression of being wronged and aggrieved appeared on its face, and as if it had accepted its fate, it lowered its head and chased after Su Ming. A gentle smile appeared on second senior brother's face at that moment. He patted the shoulder of the boy that was the bald crane, and with the attitude of an elder, he praised the boy. "Not bad. Little Baldy, your comprehension is very good. You can inherit my legacy in this aspect. Learn well in the future. You must believe in yourself and set a goal for yourself. One of these days, you will become a pillar of the country. Even if others hit you, even if others humiliate you, even if others look down on you, you must persevere and walk down your own path. This path will be bumpy, but I believe that you will be able to walk further than me." The boy that was the bald crane had an excited look on his face at that moment. He patted his chest forcefully and nodded his head firmly. "Little Baldy, I've learned my lesson. I have a goal, and my goal is to make that Douch in my mount. Darn it all, if I make it my mount, how cool will I be then?" The bald crane's eyes shone brightly, and the more it spoke, the more excited it became. "Good luck. I believe that you will definitely be able to do it." A glint appeared in second senior brother's eyes, and there was encouragement in his smile. He patted the shoulder of the boy that was the bald crane once again, then swept his gaze across the area and landed on the mud in the distance. An even more brilliant smile appeared at the corners of his lips. Several days later, the sky above the spot where the immortals had descended in eastern wastelands was dark. Great U Imperial City could be seen in the sky like a gigantic patch that covered the entire sky. There was wind blowing on the ground, stirring up waves of dust and stirring up rustling sounds on the ground. On the ground that was filled with cracks was a headless statue. That statue held a gigantic battle axe in its hand, and there was an indescribable murderous aura around it, causing all those who saw it to be unable to help their hearts from trembling. Su Ming stood beside the statue and stared at it blankly. By his side was his second senior brother. Qian Shun and the bald crane were in the distance. Qian Shun, who had his neck seized by the bald crane, had a long face and was begging for mercy, but the bald crane had an excited look on its face as it rode on Qian Shen's body. It was using Qian Shan to test out the ability it had learned from second senior brother to speak against common sense. As for the Mutt and Yu Xian, they were happily flying in circles in midair, as if they did not know what dizziness was. Besides Hu Zi, Su Ming and the other two had finally reunited with the Ninth Summit's disciples, but this reunion was filled with sadness and silence. Su Ming stared at his eldest senior brother's statue, and his second senior brother did the same. Neither of them spoke, but they gradually lifted their hands and pressed their palms on the statue at the same time. Time trickled by, and after some time, the statue suddenly shone with gray light. It circulated around the statue, then split into two wisps that charged towards Su Ming and his second senior brother's palms, which were pressed on the statue. They closed in on the statue in an instant and rushed into Su Ming's body through their palms. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. He noticed that there was a presence within the gray light that could numb his flesh and blood and turn him into stone, but he did not let go. Instead, he circulated his cultivation base to suppress that presence. Second senior brother's eyes shone with a dark light, and his skin gradually turned green. With a cold harumph, he started suppressing that presence. After a moment, a powerful rebound spread out from the statue, causing Su Ming and his second senior brother to lift their hands. Once they left the statue, the two of them looked at each other. Eldest senior brother's presence is still around. We can slowly chase away the gray light from the statue, but we'll need some time. A smile appeared on second senior brother's face. When he looked at Su Ming, praise appeared in his eyes. He had once again noticed Su Ming's level of cultivation, and his heart was filled with gratification. He knew that his youngest junior brother had truly grown up. If eldest senior brother wakes up, he will also agree to the marriage I arranged for you. Youngest junior brother, second senior brother said softly after casting a glance at Su Ming. His voice was very weak, and only Su Ming could hear it. There were also waves of ripples spreading out around the two of them to prevent other people's divine senses from getting close to them. Su Ming hesitated for a moment, then looked towards second senior brother. Second senior brother, have you figured out this woman's origins? This girl isn't a berserker, and neither is she an immortal. She has a presence that's similar to the aura of death, but it contains life force. This should be something that only a puppet would have. But look, how could she possibly be a puppet? I was originally a little uncertain about her identity, but when I saw that mutt, I was certain of her origins. Second senior brother did not lift his head to look at the girl and mutt. He looked at eldest senior brother's statue and spoke gently. Master once said that his master, who is our grandmaster, once mentioned to him that the place where the immortals and berserkers live is called True Morning Tao World, and in this endless world, there are 4 true worlds. Second senior brother looked towards Su Ming. Among the 4 great true worlds, there is one called the Emperor of Abyss True World. The people in that world practice the Abyss art, and the presence within their bodies seems to be in a state of life, but not in a state of life. It's incredibly similar to this girl. If you like this work, please come to Start Point and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 801. Also, my master mentioned that my grandmaster somehow killed a world-traversing nether dragon and took 3 of its origin scales to refine a treasure. One of them was later given to my master. My master gave it to me and fused it into my ghost body. That's why I'm able to stabilize my body. That scale has long since become one with me, which is why I can sense that this mutt is different. It is not a mutt. It is an abyss dragon, and it is definitely not an ordinary abyss dragon. It is even stronger than the Lord of the Scale that I fused with. Second senior brother spoke slowly. When Su Ming heard these words, his expression remained the same, but a thought appeared in his heart. The abyss dragon is also known as the spirit of the world traversing. This dragon should be incredibly rare, and it is one of the few ferocious beasts that can move through the barrier between the 4 great true worlds. If you can subdue this beast and use it as your own, then it will be of great help to us when we leave Death region. Through it, the possibility of us leaving this place will increase. Only when we leave the land of berserkers can we search for our master. Su Ming fell silent. After some time, he nodded his head. Moreover, this young lady is indeed not bad. She's a good match for you. Second senior brother winked and smiled. Su Ming shook his head and did not speak. Second senior brother valued the value of the girl. She was an ability that could allow them to leave Death region and even move through the 4 great true worlds. This ability was incredibly important to them because it could allow them to take the first step in searching for their master. However, this was not the only way to leave this place. However, since this was his second senior brother's decision, Su Ming did not reject it. Besides, this was basically a mutual use of each other. Perhaps saying that they were using each other was a little too much, but in truth, that was indeed the case. Su Ming believed that the girl had followed him all the way and even helped him in the Dead Sea in the past. There had to be a reason for all of this. Su Ming had some guesses as to what the reason was, but he could not prove it. She must be after something if she's following you. If that's the case, then we have to plot something as well. Only then will we be equal, and only then will we not be at a disadvantage. Youngest junior brother, don't worry. I'll handle this for you. I can somewhat guess what the lass is thinking. Second senior brother smiled gently and winked at Su Ming. Let's go. Take eldest senior brother with us. Let's return to the 9th summit. Second senior brother flicked his sleeve, and a black mist immediately emerged from his body. It surrounded the statue of eldest senior brother and swept the statue back into his second senior brother's sleeve. There were no longer any immortals in Eastern Wastelands. All the tribes were gathering together, and it would take some time before they could gather a large number of tribesmen to go to the other continents. They also had to build countless ships to cross the Dead Sea. All of this required time. Based on the promise Su Ming had made with Chi Lei Tian, Xue Xia, and the others, they would make preparations as soon as possible. Once they were done, they would immediately send a message to Su Ming. The 9th summit. Su Ming lifted his head and looked into the distance. A contemplative look appeared in his eyes. Second senior brother, a few years ago I saw Ziyan, Su Ming said softly. How is she? Second senior brother was stunned. After a while, he still wore a gentle smile on his face, but there was a hint of reminiscence in his expression. She's already married. Su Ming hesitated for a moment, but still chose to say it. Second senior brother closed his eyes. When he opened them again after a long while, there was no difference in his expression, but Su Ming could sense that his second senior brother seemed to be a little melancholic. Then let's go and see her. Second senior brother lifted his head and let the sun shine on the side of his face. His eyes might have seemed calm, but only he knew that at that moment, in his mind, there was a pretty woman with her hands on her hips glaring angrily at him while standing on the ninth summit. Su Ming nodded his head in silence. He slowly rose into the sky and turned into a long arc. Second senior brother walked quietly behind him. The mutt that seemed to not know fatigue, Yu Xian, and the bald crane that was riding on Qian Chun flew into the distance together. Yu Xian sized up Su Ming along the way, and her gaze would occasionally fall on second senior brother. Gradually, she found some clues about him and instantly became curious. She tugged at the mutt's fur, causing it to run a few steps faster, and when it caught up, it ran side by side with Su Ming. Hey, little dummy Su, what's wrong with your second senior brother? Yu Xian blinked, looking incredibly curious. Su Ming frowned and ignored Yu Xian. Little dummy Su, Yu Xian shouted once again. Little dummy Su, great dummy Su, old dummy Su. I'm your fiancé, and we're not even married yet, and you're already ignoring me? I want to break off the engagement. Yu Xian lifted her chin and shouted loudly. Are you done? Su Ming frowned and cast her glance. When she saw how aloof Su Ming was, Yu Xian let out a light harumph. When she lifted her right hand, a jade bottle appeared in her hand. She poured out a few medicinal cores that were letting out a thick medicinal fragrance, tossed one of them into her mouth, and crushed it with crunching sounds. The medicinal pill's fragrance immediately made the mutt lick its lips. Even the bald crane that was riding on Qian Chen's body immediately widened its eyes and quickly got closer. When it sniffed the medicinal fragrance, its eyes instantly sparkled. Supreme Grade Spirit Pill. This is definitely a Supreme Grade Spirit Pill. Abyss Shadow Pill. It's incredibly effective for spirit bodies and those who practice Abyss Death Aura. It can heal injuries, but it can also increase cultivation base if it's not injured. Even if eating a lot of it won't have any obvious effects, it can still beautify a person's appearance. Yu Xian poured out another pill and cast a glance at Su Ming before placing it in her mouth and crunching on it with all her might. Su Ming cast a glance at the medicinal core, but before he could speak, second senior brother immediately took a few steps forward from behind him with a gentle smile on his face. Sister-in-law, my youngest junior brother is an honest person. Don't bother with him. How about this? I'll answer you. 1 question and 5 medicinal cores, second senior brother said with a smile. I want him to answer. 10 questions and 1 medicinal core. Yu Xian also narrowed her eyes into the shape of crescent moons. She was incredibly beautiful to begin with, and this expression made her beauty bloom even more. My youngest junior brother doesn't want to talk. This is a little difficult. 2 questions and 19 medicinal cores, second senior brother said calmly. He has to listen to me on the way. 3 questions and 2 medicinal cores. Yu Xian winked. That won't do. My youngest junior brother will definitely not agree to this. We have to discuss this properly. Second senior brother shook his head. He stood with Yu Xian and continued calculating the number of medicinal cores they would have to give each other. Su Ming rubbed the center of his brows once again and looked at the sky, then at second senior brother and Yu Xian. He let out a long sigh. After a moment, second senior brother and Yu Xian reached an agreement. As for how many medicinal cores they would have to give, Su Ming did not know. He only knew that he would no longer be able to have peace on his path. Little dummy Su. If you don't answer, then I'll deduct 1 medicinal core. Big dummy Su. If you still don't answer, then fine, I'll deduct another medicinal core. Old dummy Su. Su Ming turned around and looked at Yu Xian coldly. He let out a harumph, and Yuxian instantly beamed with delight. She twirled her hair smugly. "Oh, so you're using the name Old Dummy Sue?" Second senior brother let out a few fake coughs and quickly took a few steps back to stand together with Qian Shun and the bald crane. As he looked at Su Ming, who was being held back by Yuxian, he sighed, picked up a medicinal core, and swallowed it. Youngest junior brother, if your senior brother Hu Zi was the one being harassed by such a cute girl, he would be so happy. As second senior brother spoke, he brought out another medicinal core and placed it in his mouth. The bald crane watched by the side and licked its lips non-stop. There was even saliva flowing out of its mouth. This made life miserable for Qian Shun, who was its mount. He moaned and groaned with a face full of despair. "Darn it all. I, Qian Shun, swear that once we leave the land of berserkers and my cultivation base recovers, I'll definitely teach that stupid crane a lesson." With a long face, Qian Shun swore the exact same oath he had made on the way. The group gradually flew out of eastern wastelands in this manner and stepped into the Dead Sea. Not too far away from them were the islands of South Morning. "Little Dummy Sue, look at how pretty the big fish in the sea are. Help me catch one." "Little Sue, how about calling me Big Sister?" "Hurry up, call me Big Sister." "Humph, second senior brother, I'll give you 3 medicinal cores. You'll get 3 medicinal cores for calling me Big Sister, you know?" "Little Sue, that Dead Sea giant glared at me. Go and beat him up." Sue, dummy, this sunlight is too poisonous. Help me hold the umbrella." Su Ming was practically on the verge of breaking down. Yuxian was simply endless. She had already placed all her attention on Su Ming. Even the number of times she bullied the mutt had decreased by half, which made the mutt incredibly happy. It wanted nothing more than for the girl to continue ignoring it, which was why it did not even stick its tongue out along the way, neither did it make a single sound, afraid that Yuxian would remember that it was still around. Second senior brother looked at Su Ming sympathetically and swallowed a few more medicinal cores. Most of his weakness had been healed by now, and when he saw Su Ming being tormented in such a manner, he sighed. "Youngest junior brother, I suddenly realized that this girl doesn't seem to be too suitable for you." The moment second senior brother said those words, 2 medicinal bottles were tossed towards him by Yuxian. Once second senior brother caught them, a brilliant smile instantly appeared on his face. "No, she's very suitable for you. Youngest junior brother, the 2 of you are a match made in heaven. You have to work hard and try to have a few more children." The bald crane also looked at Su Ming sympathetically. Even Qian Shun felt that compared to what Su Ming was going through, the pain he was going through was nothing. When they were not too far away from the island where the ion smoke was, Su Ming was finally unable to endure the torture. He sucked in a deep breath and suddenly looked towards Yuxian. His expression was not sullen, but a gentle smile similar to second senior brother's. He had an extraordinary appearance to begin with, and with the presence of life cultivation realm around him, he had a strange charm to him. This charm might be slightly better to other people, but to Yuxian, due to Su Ming's presence of the abyss in her soul, which was almost of the same origin as hers and was even purer, she naturally felt a sense of closeness towards him. When she saw him looking towards her, she was stunned. "Yuxian, give me a strand of your hair, okay?" Su Ming asked gently and walked towards the stunned Yuxian. He lifted his right hand and gently stroked her hair. "Tomorrow is a good day. If I update, ahem, you understand. That's why before such a good day arrives, there's no point in keeping the monthly tickets. Give them to me. All those who give me a monthly ticket can automatically get a Yuxian to bring home. She has a dragon, and she can fly, you understand. To be continued. If you like this work, please come Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation." Chapter 802. Yuxian was stunned. On the way here, she had never seen such a gentle expression on Su Ming's face, nor had she seen such a gentle voice. All of this had happened too suddenly, and there was an indescribable strangeness to it, causing Yuxian to instinctively think of something. Yet before she could retreat, Su Ming had already arrived beside her. He lifted his right hand in an incredibly natural manner and placed it on Yuxian's hair. All of this might have seemed to have happened over a long period of time, but in truth, it had happened in an instant. When Yuxian's expression changed and she moved back, Su Ming had already plucked a strand of black hair from her head. Su Ming flipped his right hand over, and that strand of hair that belonged to Yuxian immediately disappeared from his hand. Since you've been following me all this way, then you must know what sort of changes will happen once I control that strand of hair. The gentleness on Su Ming's face disappeared, and the gentleness in his words turned into coldness. He returned to his previous self. When Qian Chun saw this from behind, he shuddered. He remembered the days of misfortune he had experienced when he was an evil spirit sex mountain, and fear appeared in his gaze as he looked at Su Ming. He suddenly realized that even Su Ming was not normal. All the people around him were more evil than the last. Just how evil must a person be to use a strand of hair to tie up a small humanoid and then curse it? Qianxin imagined Su Ming crouching in a corner and laughing sinisterly while he used his hair to tie up a small humanoid and curse it. His shivers became even more intense. The bald crane widened its eyes and stared at Yuxian, whose expression had changed in a rather puzzled manner. It could not quite understand what was going on, thinking that it was just a strand of hair. Second senior brother was also momentarily stunned, but based on the change in Yuxian's expression, he could tell that she was definitely in an incredibly bad mood at that moment, and he could not help but smile faintly. Even the mutt looked as if it had just seen a ghost when it saw Su Ming plucking out a strand of Yuxian's hair. It quickly moved back a little. It had seen Su Ming use this method to cast the curse multiple times while they were following him. It might not know the origins of this art, but the terror of it was still fresh in its mind. After all, Su Ming had disappeared after the battle against Di Tian in the Dead Sea. When Yu Xin found him again, he was already an evil spirit sect, and no one else knew about what had happened to Ugly Little Thing's family. Yu Xian glared at Su Ming. She had always been intelligent, and she was the only one who could take advantage of others in her life. She was rarely taken advantage of. Even when she was with Su Ming's second senior brother, they were just using each other. She could naturally tell that Su Ming's second senior brother should have noticed something off about her or the mutt, but she also used this chance to follow them openly. In fact, in her eyes, all of this was just for fun, and she did not put too much thought into it. Her previous action of exchanging questions for elixirs seemed like a joke, but in reality, it was also her intention. Second senior brother's injuries seemed fine on the surface, but in reality, they had already damaged his foundation. If he didn't treat his injuries as soon as possible, it would have a huge impact. Yet Su Ming's second senior brother did not say anything about it, and little dummy, Su was truly an idiot. He actually did not manage to see through it. Besides, second senior brother had circulated his cultivation base in an attempt to make the statue wake up. All of these were the reasons why his injuries had become even worse. That was why she had used this chance to tease Su Ming and even helped second senior brother treat his injuries. In her eyes, she had helped Su Ming, and she had been incredibly happy on the way. After all, she could tell that Su Ming's second senior brother did not harbor any ill will towards her. This sort of scheme would naturally depend on their own abilities. As for Su Ming, Yu Xian only felt that he had pretty good potential, and the main point was that he could be sold for a good price with his status as an abyss builder. She did not pay much attention to his schemes, and the marriage was just a joke. Yet at that moment, as she glared at Su Ming, she became serious. The reason for her seriousness was because she had suffered such a huge loss because of him. This was something she had not expected. If she had been schemed against by Su Ming's second senior brother, she would not have felt too wronged. After all, Su Ming's second senior brother did things in a manner that did not follow common sense, and it was difficult for others to find any traces of his schemes. But Yu Xian was incredibly angry that she had been schemed against by Su Ming. She glared at Su Ming, and he looked back at her flatly. Their gazes met in midair, and sparks seemed to appear in their eyes. However, those sparks were not the birth of any sort of emotion, but a clash of fists. After some time, Yu Xian let out a harumph and turned her head around, no longer bothering herself with Su Ming. Instead, she sat down on the mud, and in the midst of its grievance and resignation, she continued tugging at the fur on the mutt's head. Her beautiful eyes sparkled, and no one knew just how many thoughts to punish Su Ming had appeared in her head. Su Ming's expression was indifferent. He did not care how many schemes she could come up with. At the very least, he had obtained the peace that he had not felt for a long time. The voices that made him feel like he was about to break down were no longer echoing in the air. In the midst of this peace, the group turned into several long arcs and charged towards the island where Yin was in the distance. A silence that was rarely seen on the way filled the group. Second senior brother still had a gentle smile on his face, and no one could tell what he was thinking. The mutt's expression became even more aggrieved, and it looked like it was in pain, because the girl had a stern face and was continuously fighting against the fur on its head. The bald crane blinked and immediately stopped panting. It had a feeling that a storm was about to arrive, and knew that it would be best if it did not show its head at that moment, or else it would be easy for it to be dragged into the mess. Qin Shun was the same. He lowered his head and acted as the bald crane's steed, afraid that he would be dragged into this. The group was originally not too far away from the islands in the outer regions of South Morning. As they charged forward in silence, before long, an island appeared before their eyes. That island looked desolate, and there was nothing strange about it. However, when Su Ming closed in on it and lifted his right hand to form a seal, he pushed it through the air towards the island. The island remained silent for the span of 10 breaths before a faint blue screen of light rose above it. That screen of light was a faint blue in the beginning, but it instantly turned dark blue. A long tunnel appeared on the screen of light. Fong Tsonglan, who was dressed in white and looked rather delicate, walked out with light steps. She did not look at the others, but at Su Ming. She kept looking at him, and a gentle smile appeared on her face. An ethereal air spread out from Fong Tsonglan's body, and it set off the dark blue screen of light around her, causing her to look even more dreamlike and beautiful than before. There were a dozen-something people behind her. All of them were people who had been on this island in the past. They knew Su Ming, and at that moment, they wrapped their fists in their palms and bowed towards him with respectful expressions. Among them was Ziyin and also Yamu. At the instant, Ziyin, who was dressed as a married woman, was about to bow to him as well when she suddenly started trembling viciously. She stared blankly at the gentle man beside Su Ming, who had a slightly pale face but a familiar smile on his lips. At the instant Ziyin saw that man, all the people in her world disappeared, and only the man who was as gentle as a flower with sunlight shining on the side of his face was left. It was a scene from her memories, a memory that was buried deep in her mind. It was a man who had blocked her way on the 9th summit and introduced himself to her in a gentle manner. He kept the side of his face exposed to the sun, and he thought that her actions were very cool and at ease. That was a beautiful memory in the past. Perhaps it could not be considered as a beautiful memory and could only be considered as a bud, but it had existed in the past. Yamu fell silent. He could tell that Ziyin was acting strangely, and he could tell that the person who caused her to act so strangely was the man standing beside Su Ming. In silence, anguish rose in Yamu's heart. He gradually lowered his head and took a few steps back, moving back from standing side by side with Ziyin. Ziyin, as long as you can be happy, I can give you everything. I know you don't like me, I know. Yamu lowered his head and chose to give up. Zhongzhe, who was clearly old and exuding a thick, withered presence, was also in the crowd. He looked like a normal old man, and with a pretty woman supporting him, he was looking at Su Ming with a smile. Su Ming knew the woman supporting him. She was the sacred lady of Autumn Sea Tribe, Wan Xiao. It was clear that this woman had only come to Southern Swamp Island after Su Ming had left all those years ago to reunite with Zhongzhe. Within the dark blue screen of light, Southern Swamp Island was a prosperous place. There were trees everywhere, a rather large city built there, and there were towers and buildings on the mountain ranges around it. All of these turned Southern Swamp Island into a paradise beyond the world. The fragrance of grass and flowers filled the area within the screen of light, causing all those who smelled it to feel their hearts seep into their hearts. Su Ming stood on a cliff and looked into the distance from there. He could see the blue sky and the white clouds. They were all real. The sky above South Morning was originally filled with thick layers of clouds, but the battle between Su Ming and Di Tian in the land where the immortals descended had stirred up the power of the world, causing the sky of South Morning to return to its previous color. The seawater crashed against the reefs underneath, stirring up waves and black bubbles. Fan Sanglan stood beside Su Ming. That woman was even calmer than before, and there was a graceful air about her gentle face. She stood beside Su Ming and helped him smooth out the creases on his robes. Her expression was elegant, and her tranquility made others feel her gentleness. Wan Xiu stood in the distance and watched this scene without saying a single word. There were also two people standing on another mountain not too far away. They were Su Ming's second senior brother and Ziyan. Yu Xian was also glaring at Su Ming angrily from another mountain, but most of her gaze was on Fan Sanglan. The mutt lay by the side and looked at Yu Xian, then at Su Ming, who was standing in the distance. Then its gaze fell on Fan Sanglan, who was standing beside Su Ming, and it suddenly shuddered. It felt a chill spreading out from Yu Xian, and when it looked at her through the corner of its eyes, it could clearly see that there was a similar expression in Yu Xian's eyes when its abyss dragon concubines were sizing up each other. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Qidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 803. The sea breeze brought with it a fishy stench that spread out as it struck the reefs. It fused with the fragrance of the grass and turned into a scent unique to the sea. Those who were familiar with it would like it, but those who were unfamiliar with it would find it slightly unpleasant. Fan Sanglan was clearly already familiar with it. She stood beside Su Ming and helped him straighten his clothes before looking at the horizon in the distance. She did not speak. She knew that Su Ming liked silence. After a long while, Su Ming said languidly, "After this trip, I will go to the alliance of the Western region." Fan Sanglan nodded softly. Su Ming turned his head around and looked at Fan Sanglan. This woman was not as beautiful as Yu Xian, but her calmness gave others a very comfortable feeling. This was something that Yu Xian did not have. "Will you come back?" Fan Sanglan's eyelashes fluttered lightly, and she also looked at Su Ming. Su Ming remained silent for a moment before he answered calmly, "Perhaps, perhaps not. It doesn't matter whether you come back or not. I will still be here. If one day you are tired, you can come here to rest. If that day comes and I am no longer here, my soul will still be here to accompany you," Fan Sanglan said softly. There was a persistence in her voice, along with a hint of carefreeness. Her persistence was due to her existence in this place, and her carefreeness was due to her refusal to accompany Su Ming not out of love. Su Ming did not speak, but instead looked at the world in the distance. Yet this peace with Fan Sanglan was broken a moment later by a dog's bark that sounded like the roars of a dragon. The mutt had run over to this place and was barking at the sky with an aggrieved and resigned look on its face. Yu Xian had her hands behind her back and was standing there with a smile on her face. Occasionally, she would kick the mutt a few times, causing it to bark even louder. When Su Ming and Fan Sanglan turned their heads around to look, the girl stuck out her tongue with an embarrassed look on her face. Yu Xian blinked and looked at Su Ming and Fan Sanglan. As she spoke, she kicked the mutt again. I don't know what's wrong with this mutt. It won't listen to me and keeps barking. Did it bother you?" Su Ming frowned. By his side, Fan Sanglan smiled gently and looked at the girl before she spoke softly. "Who is this sister?" "Hello, senior. I am Yu Xian. I am Su Ming's fiancé." A shy look appeared on Yu Xian's face. Fan Sanglan was momentarily stunned, but her smile did not change. She looked at Su Ming. "Second senior brother is the one who will be his wedding witness. After some time, we'll be married. Senior, you must come and drink at our wedding. I've heard about you from my husband a long time ago, and now that we've met today, Yu Xian spoke softly with a bashful, innocent, and romantic tone, but before she could finish speaking, Su Ming had already brought out the strand of hair, causing Yu Xian's words to immediately fall silent. Fong Lan smiled faintly and sized up Yu Xian a few times before going forward to hold Su Ming's arm intimately. She turned her head to the side, and when she looked at Yu Xian once again, her smile was like a blooming flower. Then, congratulations, little sister Yu Xian. I will definitely attend your wedding. But right now, I have some private matters to discuss with your fiancé. Can you please leave? Su Ming smiled wryly. This was the first time he saw this sort of expression on Fong Lan's face. She might be smiling, but there was a hint of sharpness in that smile. As Yu Xian and Fong Lan exchanged words with each other, and Su Ming laughed wryly, Ziyin was holding back her tears from another mountain in the distance. A smile appeared on her face as she looked at her second senior brother. The side of second senior brother's face was illuminated by the sun as he looked at Ziyin, and a smile gradually appeared on his face as well. However, there was a hint of melancholy in their smiles, along with a hint of memories that could not be described. It was as if they were good friends who had not seen each other for many years and were hiding away the beautiful memories of the past. When they met again, they were strangers who were no longer strangers. Did you really like me when we were in the 9th summit? Ziyin asked softly with a smile. I did indeed like you, but when you saw me, you avoided me so quickly that I didn't even have the chance to confess. Second senior brother let out a fake cough and changed his position so that the sun would shine on the other side of his face. When Ziyin saw second senior brother acting this way, she covered her mouth and laughed. Her laughter was filled with joy, as if she had returned to the past. Honestly, I've always wanted to tell you that when you let the sun shine on the side of your face, it's really ugly, Ziyin said in the midst of her laughter. Second senior brother touched his face and adjusted his angle before turning his head to look at Ziyin. What about this? It's still ugly. Then what about this? It's still ugly. But youngest junior brother was the same in the past. Second senior brother changed his angle a few times before he finally sighed. Honestly, when you smile, your gentle expression and gentle gaze make you look much better than you did just now. Ziyin looked at second senior brother and teased him with a laugh. She had changed. She was no longer the little girl in the past. A mature charm could be seen on her body, and even her words were much more generous than before. As he looked at the happy Ziyin, a dazed look appeared in second senior brother's eyes. Vaguely, the image of the girl in the 9th summit and the current Ziyin gradually overlapped with each other before slowly separating. There were similarities, but there were also changes. Under second senior brother's gaze, Ziyin gradually lowered her head. No matter how brilliant her smile was, it was an expression that hit her heart. She did not want Su Ming's second senior brother to see her fragile heart. Second senior brother fell into a rare moment of silence. With his personality, it was rare for him to be silent, but right then, as he looked at Ziyin, for some unknown reason, his heart clenched in pain, and he fell silent. There was no way he could not tell that what Ziyin was trying to hide was the age of time, and there was no way he could not see the fatigue that came from the depths of her heart. In silence, second senior brother walked slowly towards Ziyin. Ziyin bit her bottom lip and looked at the approaching man who looked like a flower. When he arrived before her and was so close to her, and when she smelled the scent of grass on his body, Ziyin lowered her head. She did not notice that Yamu was sitting on the rock wall far behind her, staring at her in a daze. His expression was filled with bitterness. Come with me. Second senior brother stretched out his hand and lifted Ziyin's chin before kissing her forehead gently. There was a dazed look on Ziyin's face as she looked at second senior brother. After a long while, she lifted her hand and touched his face gently. Once she shook her head, she took a few steps back. Second senior brother fell silent and looked at Ziyin retreating. He sighed, and that gentle smile appeared on his face once again. Then, I wish you happiness. Once he finished speaking, he lifted his head and his gaze fell on Yamu, who was sitting on the wall in the distance. He cast a deep look at him, then turned around and left the mountain. Once second senior brother left, Ziyin staggered a few steps back as if she had lost all her strength. Tears fell from the corners of her eyes. During that instant just now, she had wanted to agree to him, but she could not. Ziyin knew that the past and her memories had already become the past. All of this could only be said to be fate toying with people. She and Su Ming's second senior brother had only fallen for each other, and that was because his heart had been moved. As for her, it was only through the series of experiences she went through during the change in South Morning that she slowly became aware of her second senior brother, and that was because of her memories. In her memories, due to her helplessness in reality, she regretted it, but this was no longer love. She could not lie to herself, and neither could she lie to his second senior brother. As her tears fell, a familiar figure appeared beside Ziyin. It was Yamu, the Yamu who had taken care of her without complaint or regret over the years, who had accommodated her, who had given his all without asking for anything in return. Yamu, let's go home. Ziyin wiped away her tears and looked towards Yamu. What she saw was a gentle gaze. It was so similar to her second senior brother's. They did not stay in southern Swamp Island for too long. On the second morning, Su Ming and the others left. When they left into the distance, Fong Songlan stood quietly on the spot and watched Su Ming disappear, just like she had done in the past. She did not know when they would meet again, and she did not know whether she would still exist. She knew that she was in Su Ming's heart, but that was all. That was not love, but a barrier she could not describe. It was as if there was always a ravine between her and Su Ming. That ravine was invisible, and it was like life and death. He, the heartless person. A calm voice came from beside Fong Songlan. It was Wan Xiao. She walked to Fong Songlan's side and was also looking at Su Ming leaving into the sky. Even he doesn't know that he's a heartless person. In this world, there is no woman who can truly walk into his heart, unless they are dead people, Wan Xiao said flatly. Perhaps one day he will understand, and only once he understands will he be able to accommodate the existence of love in his heart. Wan Xiao's voice grew softer, and eventually, only she could hear it. You're wrong. Fong Songlan shook her head. He's not a heartless person. It's just that he has too many burdens on his shoulders, and they're pressing down on his heart, causing him to be unable to accommodate anything else because his heart has always been lost. Ziyin and Yamu watched Su Ming and the others leave in the sky. There was a silent man standing behind them. He was Ziche. During the years he was in the Candle Dragon's body, he had already regained his senses. Su Ming had promised Ziyin that he would help her find Ziche, and now that he had come, he had fulfilled his promise. Ziche wanted to continue following Su Ming, but when he saw his older sister, he chose to stay behind. Yuxian rode on the mutt by Su Ming's side in the sky. She would occasionally look at Su Ming with slight smugness in her heart. Due to her actions, Su Ming and Fong Songlan no longer had any time to be alone. Yuxian had thought of all sorts of ways and changed her methods to follow them throughout the day. Second senior brother had regained his gentle demeanor. No melancholy or unhappiness could be seen on him, but only he knew that during this trip, his heart was showing signs of changing for the third time, and it was all because of a woman and because he had been moved in the past. She doesn't like me, and neither does she like the man beside her right now. She likes gentle gazes. She likes those gazes because those gazes can give her warmth. Second senior brother sighed softly. As the group flew through the Dead Sea, they arrived at the island where Freezing Sky Clan was located. Gradually, at the end of their line of sight, Su Ming and second senior brother saw a mountain in the middle of the sea. They saw a tall person standing on that mountain, and that person was Uzi. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 804. Under the setting sun, the ninth summit was filled with light that was reflected off the surface of the sea, giving it a dazzling and resplendent feeling. Once Su Ming and his second senior brother saw the tall figure standing on the mountain, they gradually stopped charging forward and stood in midair. There were several thousands of feet between them and the ninth summit. That figure was incredibly familiar. It was Huzi, who had the back of a tiger, the waist of a bear, the body of an incredibly sturdy man, stood on a mountain and looked at Su Ming and his second senior brother. It was as if he had been standing there since a long time ago and had been waiting all this while. He believed that one day he would be able to wait for Su Ming's return, for his second senior brother's return, for eldest senior brother's appearance, and also for their master, Tian Xiezi, who loved changing his clothes, to return to the ninth summit. Second senior brother. Huzi's voice traveled into the air, and as his voice reverberated in the air, he took a step into the air and charged towards Su Ming and his second senior brother like a ferocious tiger. Huzi closed the distance of several thousands of feet in an instant. A huge gust of wind crashed into his face, and with a gentle smile on his face, second senior brother went forward and hugged Huzi. Huzi was filled with excitement and hugged his second senior brother tightly. His eyes were slightly red, and there were faint traces of tears in them. Those were tears of joy that could only be released after seeing a family member whom he had not seen for many years. Second senior brother, why did you only come back now? Tears fell from Huzi's eyes, and just like when he first ran into Su Ming, he started bawling. His cries spread through the area, causing all the other people living in the ninth summit to walk out and look at Su Ming and his group in the sky. Bai Su was also in the crowd. She looked at Su Ming and a smile appeared on her face. Dressed in a purple chiffon dress, her black hair danced in the wind as she stood on the mountain. Yet soon, her gaze fell on a girl sitting on a yellow mutt behind Su Ming. She was sizing up the crowd with a grin on her face. That girl's gaze also met Bai Su's at that moment. The girl pursed her lips into a smile and nodded towards Bai Su. Bai Su could not quite tell the relationship between the girl and Su Ming, but he also smiled and nodded. She could not see through the girl's thoughts, but she did not know that Yu Xian was already sighing in her heart. She cast a sideways glance at Su Ming, and suddenly had a feeling that there were always women around little dummy Su who had some sort of unclear relationship with him. There were women in southern Swamp Island, and there were women in the ninth summit as well. Based on the expression of the woman in purple from the ninth summit, Yu Xian could tell that there was definitely something going on between her and Su Ming. She did not know what was wrong with her either. Ever since her second senior brother set up the marriage that was mostly a joke, every single time she saw another woman besides Su Ming, she would feel slightly uncomfortable. However, this time, she did not take the initiative to attack like she did in southern Swamp Island. Instead, when she met Bai Su's gaze, not only did she smile, she also lifted her hand to tuck a strand of hair that had fallen in front of her eyes behind her ear. This action was filled with the gentleness of a woman, and it set off her beautiful face, immediately causing her beauty to become even more eye-catching. Huzi was bawling, and his tears were about to wet second senior brother's robes. Second senior brother's body was slender, and he could not compare to Huzi's sturdy build. When Huzi hugged him, his entire body was in Huzi's embrace. As he listened to Huzi's cries, he patted Huzi's back. The smile on his face made Huzi cry even louder when he saw it. Second senior brother, I'm so sorry. When you left, the mountain was filled with flowers and plants, but when you came back, they were all gone. The plants and flowers are all gone. Su Ming watched this scene from the side, and his heart was filled with warmth. Huzi's honesty and adorableness, second senior brother's gentleness that was like a spring breeze, all of this caused the ninth summit to have a faint feeling of how it had been in the past. Second senior brother patted Huzi's back and said with a smile, all right. Huzi, don't cry anymore. It's fine if those plants are gone. I'll just plant them again. Second senior brother, you have to promise me that you won't blame me for these plants. Huzi blinked and squeezed out more tears before he started bawling. All right, I won't blame you. Second senior brother smiled and shook his head, but a hint of doubt gradually appeared in his heart. Really? Huzi's crying immediately stopped, and his tears also disappeared in an instant. Really? Huzi, did you do something? The doubt in second senior brother's heart grew deeper. That's good. You said it yourself. That year, After you left, I saw that these plants were taking up too much space, so I cleaned them up. I see. It's fine. Second senior brother won't blame you, second senior brother said with a smile. That includes the plants outside your house. I thought they were pretty, so I drank some wine and fell asleep, but when I woke up, I found that they were all dead. Hu Zi let go of his hand and took a few steps back towards Su Ming. There's more. Second senior brother continued smiling. He would not be bothered by this sort of thing. The 3 small blue trees you planted in your house bloomed one day, and they smelled really nice. That day, I got hungry again, so while I was drinking, I plucked them off and ate them. Hu Zi took a few steps back once again and stood beside Su Ming. And the seeds in the 4 boxes hidden under your bed, I also ate them like melon seeds. Also, behind your house, you used a series of spell formations to conceal and seal your flower garden. You didn't want outsiders to find out about it. I broke through the spell formations and turned the flowers inside into wine. And now, I've finished drinking the wine. I also ate the dried fruits you hid under a big rock at the foot of the mountain when I found them. They didn't taste good. They were dry. I don't know why you always hid them in a different place every day so that I wouldn't find them. Also, I was thirsty one day and didn't have any wine, so I drank it. It made me suffer from diarrhea for a few days. Also, the water in those bottles that you treasured so much in Master's cave abode. Also, after you left, and before the catastrophe of the Eastern Wasteland arrived, I didn't think that many people in the other mountains besides me knew that you left, so I invented a rune that could change my body. That's why I pretended to be you and wore your clothes to peek at you. Second senior brother's expression had already changed, but he still looked at Hu Zi with a smile. What else? What else? Second senior brother, I can promise you that I've found all the places you hid your things in the mountain. Truth be told, you might be able to fool others with those seals, but who do you think I am? I can break them with just one glance. The only thing that was slightly more difficult and took me a long time and a lot of effort to break were the ones you hid 7 steps away from Master's cave abode. Haha, second senior brother, I didn't expect that you would have that sort of hobby. You actually hid some really interesting beast skin books. There was a man and a woman fighting in them, and it was really fun to read. Darn it, Master hid those books. Second senior brother glared at him, and his face turned slightly red. He instinctively cast a glance at the crowd on the 9th summit beneath him. Then with one move, he instantly appeared beside Hu Zi and grabbed his neck. You said you won't blame me. Youngest junior brother, save me. Hu Zi shuddered and immediately started shouting, but second senior brother still grabbed him by the neck and flew straight to the 9th summit, right into Tian Xiezi's cave abode. Screams of pain came from the cave abode. A strange expression appeared on Su Ming's face, and he let out a fake cough. When he returned to the 9th summit, Hu Zi had not been like this, so it could be seen that he should be full of energy now. Little dummy Su, what's that beast skin book about a man and a woman fighting that your senior brother mentioned? Could it be some sort of divine ability? But why would it only depict a man and a woman fighting? Yu Xian frowned and thought about it for a moment before she asked Su Ming, puzzled. Su Ming was also momentarily stunned. Once he thought about it carefully, he shook his head. He had seen second senior brother's expression change when Hu Zi said those words just now, and he looked as if he was in a hurry to defend himself. He then looked at the crowd underneath before bringing Hu Zi in a Master's cave abode and packing him up. Could it really be some sort of divine ability? And I can't let anyone else know about it? Su Ming cast a glance at his Master's cave abode and listened to Hu Zi's screams of pain coming from within. He wondered if he should find some time to ask just what sort of divine ability it was. Qian Shun, the bald crane, and the mutt were by the side. The mutt rolled its eyes, and a disdainful look appeared on its face. Qian Shun also had a dirty look on his face. Only the bald crane was stunned. Its expression was about the same as Su Ming and Yu Xian's. It scratched its head and started mumbling to itself. A man and a woman fighting? It must be some sort of strange divine ability. If I have the chance, I'll have to learn it. Besides them, there were quite a number of people on the 9th summit at that moment. Most of the men and women immediately had incredibly strange expressions on their faces. They would occasionally look towards the cave abode from which the screams of pain were coming from, then look at Su Ming whom they respected like a god. Bai Su's cheeks turned red. The so-called beast skin of a man and a woman fighting with a rune that Hu Zi had used a long time to break when Su Ming had gone out to search for his master a few years ago, and Hu Zi had recovered his power. At that time, she had heard Hu Zi mumbling under his breath that he had tried to break the rune several times but failed. He had only managed to do so a year ago. Out of curiosity, Bai Su had also seen the beast skin of a man and a woman fighting by the side. Most of the people in and around the ninth summit had strange expressions on their faces, and they were trying their best to hold back their laughter. Only Su Ming, Yu Xian, and the bald crane did not know what was going on. At that moment, Hu Zi's aggrieved voice echoed from the cave abode from which the screams of pain came. Second senior brother, you didn't keep your promise. I just saw the beast skins you collected, and they're just a man and a woman, a man and two women, a man and three women, a man and four women, and so on, fighting naked. Ah, those aren't mine, they're Master's. There was anger in second senior brother's voice. Nonsense. Your presence is clearly on that rune, and it's the same as the other seals. Don't even think about lying to me. That's right, there's also the battle between the two women on that beast skin. That's Master imitating my seals. Damn it, Hu Zi, I'll definitely teach you a lesson today. If you like this work, please come to Start Point and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 805. Night fell on the ground and turned into waves of light on the surface of the sea, as if there were silver scales spreading on the surface. The sea breeze was light, but it was not cold when it blew on people's faces. It seemed to have fused with the moonlight and turned into a veil made by the moon. Under the moonlight and the sea breeze, Bai Su smiled. She might have looked calm, but the wild beauty in her bones was still there. She held a pot of wine in her hand, and once she filled the cup before Su Ming, she sat down obediently beside him. Su Ming's second senior brother sat across him. There was a melancholic look on his face as he looked at the sky and the sea. He touched the mountain rock beneath him and drank the entire cup in one go. It feels good to be home, second senior brother whispered softly. Hu Zi was also by his side. At that moment, his face was swollen and bruised. When he heard this, he let out a harumph and did not use a wine cup. Instead, he picked up the pot of wine in front of him and took a big swig from it. You broke your promise. If I knew this earlier, I wouldn't have told you. It's just some plants and a stupid book about a man and a woman fighting. I don't care about. Hu Zi was mumbling under his breath, but when he saw second senior brother looking at him with a smile on his face, he quickly shut his mouth. He was afraid of second senior brother, and Su Ming knew this as well. Hu Zi was not afraid of eldest senior brother in the ninth summit. In fact, he was not even afraid of his master, much less Su Ming. He was originally the youngest, but Su Ming's arrival instantly magnified the feeling of being a senior brother in his heart. In his mind, even if he died, he would not let anyone bully his youngest junior brother. However, Hu Zi was truly afraid of his second senior brother, because eldest senior brother was always in isolation and would not beat him up, because Su Ming was his youngest junior brother and would not beat him up, because his master was too busy and would occasionally look for Hu Zi with shifty eyes to have him break some runes. That was why he was not afraid of his master. However, second senior brother had beaten him up more than once. Those experiences had made Hu Zi incredibly afraid of his second senior brother, but he was a strange person. The more afraid he was, the more he wanted to provoke him. It was precisely because he was afraid that when he saw his second senior brother, he immediately burst into tears. His cries and tears were filled with excitement because they had reunited, but also due to his fear and nervousness. He simply used words to trap second senior brother, and then angrily told him everything he had done. However, he did not expect that he would still be beaten up. You're my senior brother, but you beat me up as soon as you see me. Feeling wronged, Hu Zi gulped down another mouthful of wine. Senior brother Hu Zi, what is that book about men and women fighting that you mentioned just now? Can you let me take a look? That voice was incredibly clear, and there was a hint of innocence in it. It belonged to Yu Xian, who had a puzzled and curious look on her face as she sat beside Su Ming and asked Hu Zi. Second senior brother's face twitched, and he glared at Hu Zi viciously. Hu Zi's exultant desire to speak was immediately dispelled. Little sister Yu Xian, that book isn't anything good, and neither is it a divine ability or an art. It's best if you don't read it. It's very difficult to understand. Yu Xian and Bai Su were by Su Ming's side at that moment. Bai Su covered her mouth and chuckled softly. Yu Xian was momentarily stunned, then lifted her chin. No matter how difficult a book is, I can still understand it. I have a lot of books in my house, and I finished reading all of them when I was 10. There's nothing I don't understand. Senior brother Hu Zi, bring me that book. I refuse to believe that I can't understand it. Yu Xian let out a harumph. The mutt was lying beside Yu Xian. When it heard her words, it blinked and bared its teeth in a smile. That expression was incredibly strange, but it did not make a single sound. Qian Shun was currently holding a pot of wine with an attentive look on his face and was pouring wine for second senior brother. When he heard Yu Xian's words, some of the wine spilled out. He suppressed the crazed laughter in his heart and started shouting in his heart. You little witch, to think that you would have such a day. He was looking forward to seeing the change in her expression once she read the book about men and women fighting. That's right, Hu Zi, come, give me that book. The boy that was the bald crane rubbed his hands together with a curious look on his face, but before he could finish speaking, Hu Zi glared at him and lifted his right hand to seize the boy's neck. Damn you. Don't think that your grandpa who can't tell who you are. You're that damn bald crane. As the bald crane screamed in pain, Hu Zi spun the bald crane around a few times and continued smashing it against the ground. Turn a girl out for your grandpa, Hu. I'll personally let you know how that book is drawn. Hu Zi stood up and spun the bald crane around, smashing it against the ground. Second senior brother had just picked up his wine cup and was taking a small sip. When he heard Hu Zi's words, he nearly spat it out. With a wry smile, he looked at Hu Zi and the bald crane, then at the puzzled Yu Xian, as well as Bai Su, who clearly knew what was going on but did not say anything. She was only smiling. Eventually, he looked towards Su Ming. When he saw that Su Ming's expression might be indifferent, but he was still slightly curious about the bee skin book, he could not help but let out a long sigh. He shifted his gaze away and looked at the statue placed right before the crowd. That statue was of his eldest senior brother, and there was even a pot of wine before him. This was a gathering of the Ninth Summit. His eldest senior brother might have turned into a statue, but this was his home. This was a gathering of fellow disciples of the Ninth Summit, and he had to be present. The bald crane's pained screams rang out, and its appearance swiftly changed to return to its original form. It was a bald crane without feathers, and Hu Zi grabbed it by the neck. Then, he swung it through the air in the shape of a fan and continuously crashed into the ground. Grandson, I have a backbone. I won't change. Darn it all, if I hadn't saved you in the past, you would have turned into a seed a long time ago. I won't change. I won't change. Hu Zi glared at him and pulled the bald crane before him. You're still talking about the past? Don't think that your grandpa, who doesn't know. You could have easily saved me, but you made me suffer. You won't change, right? All right, I'll drag you into my dreams, and I'll continue beating you up in my dreams. Let me tell you, your grandpa who is amazing. A year ago, I had a dream, and I dreamed that I had reached Berserker Soul Realm. Guess what? When I woke up, I was truly in Berserker Soul Realm. Su Ming smiled and picked up his wine cup to take a sip. He had long since been able to tell that Hu Zi's level of cultivation was much stronger than it was in the past, and only at that moment did he know what was going on. When he remembered that his master had once mentioned the strangeness of Hu Zi's dream and his expectations towards him, he did not find it strange anymore. Second senior brother was also looking at Hu Zi with a smile. He might have often beaten him up, but when he saw that Hu Zi's level of cultivation had increased, he was even happier than Hu Zi himself. I won't change even if I enter my dream. I have a backbone, and I won't be subdued by force. It was rare for the bald crane to be so strong. It spoke in a shrill voice, and, judging by its expression and tone, it was clear that no matter what, it would not submit to Hu Zi's tyrannical might. Yet at that moment, Yu Xian, who was standing beside Su Ming, blinked and spoke with a grin. Senior brother Hu Zi, don't be angry just yet. How about this? I can make it turn into what you want, but you have to show me the divine ability you learned from that book, okay? Second senior brother immediately let out a few fake coughs. But before he could speak, Su Ming cast his gaze on the bald crane. You can change it a little. Senior brother Hu Zi, you've reached the Berserker Soul Realm, so you can show me your divine ability and let me see the circulation of your chi. I keep having the feeling that there are still some parts of your chi that have stagnated. I wonder what's the reason behind this. Second senior brother patted his forehead. He did not know what he should say. Hu Zi's expression was also a little strange. He might be a simple and honest person, but he had also figured out what was drawn in the Bee Skin book. After a moment of hesitation, a rare flush appeared on his face. Youngest junior brother, you really want to see it? Hu Zi looked at Su Ming eagerly. Su Ming was momentarily stunned, then nodded. Are you sure you really want to see it? Hu Zi looked as if he was about to cry. He looked towards second senior brother as if he was asking him what he should do. Second senior brother decided to turn his head away and ignore Hu Zi. All right then, youngest junior brother, since you want to see it, then I'll throw caution to the wind. When Hu Zi gritted his teeth, excitement appeared on Yu Xian's face. She pointed at the bald crane and spoke in a clear voice. Little Baldy, hurry up and change. I won't change. Even if you beat me to death, I won't change. It doesn't matter who says it, I won't change. I'm a mighty grandpa crane, I won't submit this time. Even if Dao Chan becomes my steed, I won't change. The bald crane said loudly with a determined expression. It continuously told itself that this time, it had to follow its principles and absolutely could not turn into a woman. This was the bottom line that it absolutely could not shake as Grandpa Crane. Youngest junior brother, if it doesn't change, there's nothing I can do. Hu Zi let out a sigh of relief and quickly sat down. He picked up his pot of wine, but just as he was about to drink, he suddenly widened his eyes and stared at Yu Xian with a dumbfounded expression. Yu Xian brought out an embroidered bag from her bosom and poured out a few sparkling spirit stones from it. Then, she threw one into the distance. The crystal turned into a ray of crystalline light and flew out, but an even faster black shadow shot up with a whoosh. Once it caught up to the crystal, it grabbed it with its claw. Naturally, it was the beaming bald crane. It used its claw to grab the crystal and bit into it. Its eyes instantly shone. Yu Xian grinned and threw out a few more crystals, causing the bald crane to fly around in midair. In the end, Yu Xian poured the bag on the ground, and a dozen-something crystals immediately piled up on top of each other. The light spreading out from them caused the bald crane to tremble in excitement. Yu Xian winked and said with a grin, "Go ahead and change. If you do, I'll give all of these to you." At that moment, all principles and bottom lines in the bald crane's eyes became dim. Only the pile of crystals was the highest bottom line in the world, and it was the strongest principle it had. Without the slightest hesitation, its body suddenly flashed, and a delicate young lady with a dirty expression appeared in front of everyone. Senior brother Hu Zi, hurry up and cast your divine ability. Yu Xian was truly curious, and she was also slightly dissatisfied with Bai Su's words that she could not understand. When she saw that the bald crane had already changed, she immediately urged him to hurry up. Su Ming also looked over. Second senior brother closed his eyes and sighed with a wry smile. Hu Zi was stunned. He looked at Su Ming, then at Yu Xian, then at Bai Su, who had a strange expression on her face and was blushing red. Finally, he looked towards his second senior brother, who had his eyes closed, and he scratched his head violently. He was truly about to cry. Youngest junior brother, you really want to watch? The mustard is over. Aren't we going to vote and celebrate? To be continued. If you like this work, please come Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 806. In the end, Huzi still could not act out the contents of the beast skin book with the bald crane in front of Su Ming. In his gloominess, he stared at Su Ming and patted his own forehead. He felt that he was indeed the smartest person in the Ninth Summit. At the very least, he was smarter than his youngest junior brother, or else why would he know things his youngest junior brother did not know? But he did. In fact, he had even practiced it multiple times in his dreams. That was why he decided to bring out the beast skin book he had hidden away after his second senior brother took it away and handed it to Su Ming. Just like that, the bald crane quickly went to Su Ming's side. Yu Xian also widened her eyes and looked at the beast skin book with rapt attention. She could not accept this. She believed that no matter how profound a divine ability was, she might still be able to see some clues. A focused look also appeared on Su Ming's face. Once he took the beast skin book, he spread it out, but the moment he saw it, he was stunned. Then, he frowned, and after some thought, a strange look gradually appeared on his face. The bald crane was dumbfounded. After some time, it let out a long sigh, but its eyes shone brightly. It stared at the picture on the beast skin book, and even its breathing quickened. Yu Xian stared at it for a long time before a frown gradually appeared on her face. However, there was still confusion on her face, which was why she snatched the beast skin book from Su Ming's hands and started examining it carefully. Su Ming let out a fake cough and cast his gaze on Huzi. A wronged expression immediately appeared on Huzi's face. When Su Ming looked towards his second senior brother, he quickly picked up his pot of wine and pretended to drink. Little dummy Su, this divine ability is very simple. How could you not understand it? But why do they need to wear no clothes when they train? Yu Xian propped her chin on her left hand and flipped through the beast skin book in puzzlement. Judging by her expression, she did not seem to be joking. She was indeed very puzzled by this. I don't know either. Su Ming quickly picked up his wine cup and took a quick sip to avoid the question. He had a vague idea of what was going on, but the more he understood it, the more naive Yu Xian seemed. It was also at this moment that Su Ming saw a hint of cuteness on Yu Xian for the first time. No, there's something wrong with your expression. You must know why. Tell me, why don't we train together and see? But we have to wear clothes. Yu Xian flipped through the beast skin book a few more times and started begging Su Ming. Su Ming nearly coughed up his wine. He snatched the thick skin book from Yu Xian and threw it to his second senior brother. As he coughed dryly, he could not remember how long it had been since he last felt so embarrassed. Bai Su covered her mouth and giggled by the side. When she saw that Yu Xian was still thinking hard about the mysteries of the beast's skin, she laughed so hard that her body trembled. When she saw the rare awkwardness on Su Ming's face, she became even happier. All right, we'll talk about this matter later. Yu Xian, Bai Su, the two of you should go and rest first. The few of us brothers still have some matters to discuss. Second senior brother placed the beast skins into his bosom, coughed a couple of times, and slowly said. Bai Su stood up obediently. Yu Xian, on the other hand, had been pondering. When she saw the proud expression on the dog's face, she stepped forward and kicked the dog. She picked up the fur on the dog's neck and left with Bai Su. Bai Su stood up obediently. As for Yu Xian, she was still thinking about it. When she saw the mutt baring its teeth with a smug look on its face, she went up and kicked it. Then, she grabbed the fur around its neck and left with Bai Su. As for the bald crane and Qian Shun, some sort of thought rose in the bald crane's head. It cast a profound look at Qian Shun, and when it felt goosebumps rise in its heart, it sat on Qian Shin's body and continued treating him as its mount before leaving. As for the bald crane and Qian Shun, once some sort of thought rose in the bald crane's head, it cast a profound look at Qian Shun. When it looked at him so deeply that goosebumps rose in its heart, it jumped on Qian Shin's body and continued treating him as its mount before leaving. At that moment, only Su Ming and his senior brothers were left at the top of the ninth summit. Su Ming drank mouthfuls of wine, and when he finished his eighth cup, he lifted his head and glared at Huzi and his second senior brother. However, Huzi had a bitter look on his face. When Su Ming looked at him, he immediately spoke up. Youngest junior brother, those beast skins belong to second senior brother. Nonsense, those are masters. but there's your presence on them. Damn it, that's Master imitating my presence. Those are really Masters. Second senior brother could no longer maintain his relaxed smile and said with a glare. Su Ming watched Hu Zi and second senior brother arguing about the owner of the beast skin book by the side. He smiled wryly and shook his head, then picked up the pot of wine and took a big swig from it. Perhaps it's not Masters, but eldest senior brothers? Hu Zi blinked. That's also possible. Perhaps it's eldest senior brothers. Second senior brother immediately smiled. Honestly, I think it's possible that youngest junior brothers as well. Hu Zi cast a sideways glance at Su Ming. Before second senior brother could cooperate with him, Su Ming quickly put down the pot of wine with a stern look on his face. Those beast skin books belong to Master, Su Ming said seriously. That's right. Even youngest junior brother thinks so. Looks like it really belongs to Master. Perhaps it's eldest senior brother. Eldest senior brother, if you don't say anything, I'll take it that you shook your head. Eldest senior brother won't lie, so it must belong to Master. Second senior brother instantly became serious. Once he nodded his head, he said to Hu Zi, That's right. Even youngest junior brother thinks so. Looks like it really belongs to Master. Perhaps it's eldest senior brother. Eldest senior brother, if you don't say anything, I'll take it that you shook your head. Eldest senior brother won't lie, so it must belong to Master. All right, it belongs to Master. After all, Master is a disrespectful old man. He often uses my rune to peek at others. It's only logical that he hid these things. Hu Zi immediately stood on the same side as second senior brother and Su Ming. As Hu Zi fell silent, second senior brother also stopped talking. He looked at the sea and sky in the distance with a slightly melancholic look on his face. In the darkness of the night, as Hu Zi fell silent, second senior brother stopped talking as well. He looked at the sea and the sky in the distance with a slightly melancholic expression. Su Ming drank his wine quietly, one sip at a time. I miss Master, Hu Zi murmured softly. Once I arrived in Eastern Wastelands, I searched through all the places, but I only found a hint that Master had already left the land of Berserkers and left Death region. When I was ambushed and chased by the Immortal Sects, Tion attacked and suppressed me under Great Leaf Immortal Sect. Many years later, I could feel eldest senior brother's aura. Second senior brother picked up the wine pot and took a big gulp. His expression was filled with sorrow. I killed all of Tion's clones in the land where the Immortals descended, and in the end, I destroyed his magical body. As one of the Immortals' 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, it should be difficult for Tion to descend to the land of Berserkers within a short period of time. Eldest senior brother was captured by Tion in the past and wanted to turn him into his clone, but in the end, eldest senior brother used Tion's help to return to his ancestral roots and cut off his own head. He picked up his battle axe and was killed by Shingon. Su Ming mumbled softly as he looked at his eldest senior brother's statue. I knew that second senior brother was in Great Leaf Immortal Sect because eldest senior brother told me. Eldest senior brother also said that Master's presence was no longer in the land of Berserkers, but Master should not have died. Then there is only one explanation. Second senior brother, you said that Master has left the land of Berserkers. Su Ming remained silent for a moment before he drank his wine and spoke in a low voice. Then we can be certain that Master has left the land of Berserkers. A dark light shone in second senior brother's eyes as he mumbled. Then what could have caused Master to leave the land of Berserkers in such a hurry that he did not even have time to tell us? Unless Master didn't leave on his own accord, but because of an accident or because he ran into a powerful enemy. Morning Dao Sect. Hu Zi suddenly lifted his head and looked at second senior brother. Second senior brother remained silent for a moment before he nodded. Su Ming looked at them. He had a vague feeling that Hu Zi and second senior brother knew some secrets that he did not. Hu Zi fell silent. A smile appeared at the corners of second senior brother's lips, but there was a piercingly cold, killing intent within that smile. Su Ming's expression was calm, but the murderous aura within that calmness was the thickest among the 3 of them. That last Yuxian's Mutt is a world-traversing abyss dragon. That last must have been able to step into the land of berserkers because of that dragon. Through that dragon, we might be able to leave the land of berserkers, leave Death region, and head to the land of immortals. A glint appeared in second senior brother's eyes. Qianqian isn't a berserker either. He's also a berserker who descended to this land, but he doesn't seem to be an immortal. The method he used to descend to this land is also different from the others, but I once made a promise with him that he would bring me to the place where he descended, Su Ming said calmly. That bald crane also has its own secrets. I brought it into my dream once in the past, but it didn't notice that I saw some of its scattered memories. That bald crane didn't descend to the land of berserkers, and neither did it come from the land of immortals. It came from true Morning Dao world. It seems to have some sort of unclear relationship with the Morning Dao sect Master spoke of. A lively glint appeared in Huzi's eyes. At that moment, the simple and honest look on his face could no longer be seen. Instead, there was a rather cunning look on his face. Youngest junior brother, you joined the sect rather late. Not long after that, you left to join the battle between the shamans and berserkers. After that, you were alone outside. There are plenty of things you don't know about. Master didn't have time to tell you about them before he disappeared. Second senior brother looked at Su Ming. He could tell that Su Ming was puzzled. Master is a berserker, but his sect's legacy isn't from the land of berserkers. It's from an incredibly huge sect in true Morning Dao world. There are countless disciples in that sect, and it's the strongest sect in true Morning Dao world. More accurately speaking, true Morning Dao world only exists because of that sect. The entire true Morning Dao world, even the immortals' 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, are just a part of that sect. That sect is too big, and its name is Morning Dao sect. In truth, true Morning Dao world is this sect. A focused glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. Chapter 807. Then who is Dao Chun? What is his relationship with Morning Dao sect? Su Ming asked slowly after remaining silent for a moment. Dao Chun is Morning Dao sect progenitor and the master of true Morning Dao world. His will has existed for countless years, and it is rumored that he has already reached an incredibly terrifying level of cultivation. I don't know much about the specifics, but when Master introduced Morning Dao sect, he mentioned that his master, who is our grandmaster, is one of the countless sect elders in Morning Dao sect. It does not matter whether it is the immortals or the other races. In truth, as long as they have a certain amount of qualifications, they can trace their roots back to Morning Dao sect. Behind them is a sect elder. Morning Dao sect is like a huge net that covers every corner of true Morning Dao world. That is why I said that Morning Dao sect is true Morning Dao world. Our Grandmaster has accepted 9 disciples in his life. Master was taken in by him when he came to the land of berserkers to wander about. At that time, there were a few other berserkers who had also entered our Grandmaster's tutelage. They had accompanied our Grandmaster to the land of berserkers many times, but in the end, due to some differences in ideals, differences in their views on the path of cultivation, and because many of them were injured in an accident, our master left our Grandmaster and returned to the land of berserkers. When he returned to the land of berserkers, his cultivation base never recovered from the injuries he suffered in the past, and he became even weaker, but it was precisely because of this weakness that he created the change of hard art. It is the art of change of hard art that no matter what divine abilities we practice, and no matter how our appearances change, we will never change. Eldest senior brother is the descendant of 9 Li and the sacred lord of the shamans. He has been with our master for the longest time. I was originally a fragmented soul in the world, a phantom that was attracted and gathered by the first phantom equal of Phantom Deus tribe. I never had any intelligence. When the phantom equal died and I was about to disappear, I suddenly gained intelligence, but I did not disappear. Instead, I drifted about in the world. Many years later, I met our master. He enlightened me and used Abyss Dragon Scale to solidify my body. After that, I followed our master and became his second disciple, second senior brother said softly, and his voice echoed in the area. Hu Zi's origins are even more complicated, but he was also the disciple master valued the most in the past. His potential surpassed that of eldest senior brother and I. Second senior brother cast Hu Zi a glance. Hu Zi drank his wine in silence and did not speak. Death region is a mysterious place. Master once said that this sort of mysterious existence is a place that even Morning Dao sect must be wary of. Berserkers. Heh. Berserkers aren't a race that appeared naturally. They came from one of the races in Death region. Based on what Master understands, there are plenty of races in Death region, and they are known as sinners in Morning Dao sect. Second senior brother lifted his head and cast a glance at the sky. There are countless worlds in the depths of Death vortex. That place is the true Death region, and the land where we berserkers live is in truth just one of the worlds in that gigantic Death vortex. The immortals descended in our land and became rather famous in Morning Dao sect is because Lai Shan Xiu was born in the land of berserkers, and he is the first god of berserkers. He is an anomaly, a madman whose level of cultivation reaches the heavens. He is also the first powerful warrior to walk out of the land of berserkers and cause Death region to be shocked and Morning Dao sect to buzz. He is also the first generation Death child that Death region acknowledged and supported with all its might. Su Ming's breathing quickened. These things were somewhat similar to what he understood, but there were even more things he had never heard of before. He conquered many worlds and forcefully opened up a path that leads to Bright Yang region, which is also the path to true Morning Dao world, where Morning Dao sect is located, causing the land of berserkers to become the only unique region that can pass through Bright Yang region and Death region, allowing the immortals and the other races from true Morning Dao world to come here. He fought against true Morning Dao world and did not die. He enslaved the people of many worlds, causing Lai Shan Xiu's name to spread through Morning Dao sect, causing the land of berserkers to turn into a transit point for Death region and Bright Yang region. That's why the Grand Master was able to come here and taken Master as his disciple, second senior brother said calmly. Second senior brother said calmly. Each of his words verified Su Ming's understanding of the world, and from there, he gained a true understanding towards this world. There are 9 cultivation planets beyond Death region. Those 9 cultivation planets were set up by the immortals to seal off Death region. In truth, they can't seal off Death region. They were set up for the berserkers. However, besides those 9 cultivation planets, there's also a rune that the immortals can't control. It's a rune personally set up by Morning Dao sect. That rune is formed by 99 tiger talismans and 49 dragon talismans. This is the first rune used to seal off Death region. Even Lai Shan Xiu did not dare to touch it carelessly in the past. Instead, with his powerful level of cultivation and his status as Death child, he opened up a new path and avoided the rune, creating the uniqueness of the land of berserkers. Master spent a lot of effort in the past. I don't know what method he used either, but he managed to lure out a wisp of the tiger talisman's presence from the 99 tiger talismans. He gathered it together into a soul and sent it into the body of a berserker woman chosen by Master, and she gave birth to a son. He was Hu Zi. Su Ming sucked in a deep breath and looked towards Hu Zi. Hu Zi was still drinking his wine in silence. Clearly, he had known about all of this a long time ago. At that moment, there was no expression on his face. Hu Zi's dream invasion is a divine ability he was born with. It's the source of power within the first rune. It's an art left behind by the person who set up the rune. Master is a great genius. He once said that Hu Zi is the key to breaking the first rune, and only Hu Zi can break it. Second senior brother lifted his hand and scratched Hu Zi's head. Hu Zi simply allowed second senior brother's affectionate action. He put down the pot of wine and looked at Su Ming. Youngest junior brother, this is my origin. I don't know about Master's plans. I only know that Master is good to me. Eldest senior brother is good to me. Second senior brother might always beat me up, but he's also good to me. Youngest junior brother, you're also good to me. That's why my life is yours. I will do whatever you want me to do, Huzi said seriously. As for you, youngest junior brother, Master once said that he couldn't see through you, second senior brother said slowly, while looking at Su Ming. When you went to the battlefield between the shamans and berserkers, Master watched you leave into the distance and told me and Huzi that he couldn't see through your origins. The aura of death on your body is similar to that of the Emperor of Abyss True World, but it's also different. Your presence and everything about you made Master remember something he heard from his Grandmaster. It was a secret that happened in True Morning Dao World. No one knew how many years ago, when True Morning Dao World was at its strongest, a married couple broke through the True World and came to this place. They should have come here to seek refuge. At that time, the woman was already pregnant, and the man was gravely injured, but the presence spreading out from their bodies stirred up a drastic change in the entire True Morning Dao World. They did not seem to intend to stay for long in True Morning Dao World, but the change in True Morning Dao World's presence attracted Morning Dao Sect's attention. They used some unknown method to ascertain that the married couple had a supreme treasure that surpassed Morning Dao Cauldron. That treasure did not seem to belong to any of the four great true worlds. A battle for the treasure broke out, but the man was too strong. He was so strong that even if he was gravely injured, he could still kill a monstrous number of people. Even True Morning Dao World, who was at the peak of his condition, had suffered a huge defeat when he fought against him. If the woman had not affected her aura in her womb during the battle, no one would have been the man's opponent. The woman's constitution seemed to be incredibly unique. Once her aura in her womb was affected, she lost all of her cultivation base. Morning Dao Sect launched a frenzied counterattack. It was a bloodbath that swept through all of True Morning Dao World. In the end, the man rushed out of True Morning Dao World with grief, anger, madness, his wife who was about to die, and even graver injuries. Before he left, it was said that with bloodshot eyes, he turned his head around to look at the pursuers from Morning Dao Sect and said one thing, second senior brother said softly while looking at Su Ming. Su Ming was silent. He did not speak. This world was built for Abyss. Second senior brother's voice came to a halt. From then on, the galaxies in True Morning Dao World gradually showed signs of withering. All the spiritual aura in the world gradually faded away. In fact, quite a number of cultivation planets turned into wastelands due to the lack of spiritual aura. This strange phenomenon stirred up great panic. Morning Dao Sect was no longer as strong as it was in the past, but even so, it is still the overlord of True Morning Dao World. Master knows that your name is Su Ming, and because he could not see through your origins, he thought of this rumor. He also remembered that there's a seal in the Immortals galaxy, and it is said that there's a corpse in that seal. When second senior brother said these words, he no longer spoke. Huzi stared at Su Ming in silence. After a long while, the night grew darker. The sea breeze brought with it moisture and a hint of coldness. It lifted Su Ming's hair, causing him to lift his head and look at the sky before he gradually closed his eyes. After some time, a smile appeared on Su Ming's face. He opened his eyes and looked at his second senior brother and Huzi. I don't know whether I have anything to do with the husband and wife second senior brother mentioned. What I do know is that I am the soul of the corpse sealed in the land of immortals, Su Ming said calmly. Second senior brother and Huzi were silent, but after a moment, Huzi lifted his head swiftly. When he looked at Su Ming, he lifted his right hand and struck his chest. Darn it all, those damn immortals. Youngest junior brother, don't worry, I will definitely help you snatch your physical body back. Huzi said loudly, and a serious expression that came from the depths of his heart appeared on his face. It doesn't matter what our identities are. I am your second senior brother, and you're my youngest junior brother. We are family. A smile appeared on second senior brother's face. It was his usual smile, and it was incredibly warm in the night sky and on the ninth summit. Master has gone missing. It should be an accident, Or perhaps he was forcefully taken away from the land of berserkers. No matter what, this is not Master's will. We must search for him. Second senior brother clenched his fists. But where are we supposed to find him? Huzi asked loudly. Huzi, do you still remember the strange words Master said before he left? A glint appeared in second senior brother's eyes, and a dark light shone in them. There's one more chapter at around midnight. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 808. Before Master left, he looked at the sky and said something. A nostalgic look appeared on second senior brother's face. He said, "That time is almost up, but the catastrophe of the eastern wastelands appeared. Could it be?" Second senior brother's eyes sparkled, and he looked at Su Ming. "That's it. Youngest junior brother, what can you see from those words? Time is almost up? First of all, you have to know what time Master meant by that. As for the catastrophe of the eastern wastelands in the second sentence, it must have made Master think about it, and from there, he made some guesses. Those guesses are what Master did not finish his sentence," Su Ming said slowly. "When I was suppressed under Great Leaf Immortal Sex Mountain, I studied those words for a long time. I thought back to all the words Master had said since I started following him, but I couldn't find what time he meant. Youngest junior brother, Huzi, did Master ever tell you anything about time?" Second senior brother looked at Su Ming and Huzi. "I can't remember. He shouldn't have." Huzi scratched his head. Su Ming remained silent for a moment. He could not find any clues, but his gaze soon focused and fell on the statue that was his eldest senior brother. Eldest senior brother was the first person to say that Master's presence was not in the land of berserkers, and he had his guesses as well. Besides, eldest senior brother has been with Master for the longest time. Perhaps eldest senior brother knows. As Su Ming spoke, second senior brother and Huzi looked towards their eldest senior brother, who had turned into a statue. After a period of silence, second senior brother sucked in a deep breath. "We'll talk about all of this once eldest senior brother wakes up. I've thought a way to wake him up, and there should be an 8/10 of a chance for him to wake up." Second senior brother looked at Huzi. "Huzi, your level of cultivation is the lowest, but your art of entering dreams is mysterious. Use it to search for eldest senior brother's consciousness in this statue. His consciousness should be muddled, but you're his junior brother. Even if eldest senior brother's consciousness is muddled, he won't harm you. Once you find eldest senior brother's consciousness, use your art of entering dreams to protect his consciousness so that it will not disappear." Huzi nodded solemnly. For him, this was as important as saving his master. The importance of this matter was greater than his life. "Youngest junior brother, it's difficult for me to use the ranks of the berserkers to categorize my level of cultivation. Based on what I can sense, the power I can bring out now surpasses that of a berserker who has attained great completion in the berserker soul realm, but it's still a little lacking compared to yours. Among the three of us, your level of cultivation is the highest. You have to do the most important thing." Second senior brother looked towards Su Ming. Su Ming met his second senior brother's gaze, and a brilliant light appeared in his eyes as he waited for his second senior brother's words. "The more blood from the shamans, the better, especially the shaman tribe's great patriarch. That person's power was extraordinary in the past, and I remember that he had already woken up during the war between the shamans and barbarians. His efforts were even more crucial. But you have to be careful of him. When Master was at his weakest in the past, he fought against this person, and he wasn't his opponent because he had a talisman with him. That talisman came from Morning Tao sect, and according to Master, it was formed by half of the power of thought from a sect elder of Morning Tao sect. It could make the shaman tribe's great patriarch become stronger even after he died 9 times. Based on Master's analysis, this person was the same as him. He was also secretly taken in as a disciple by someone from Morning Tao sect, and he was given this talisman, which made him nearly undying. Every single time he woke up, he would have 9 lives, and every single time he died, his power would increase exponentially. When he died for the 9th time, the power of the talisman would spread out in a large area, making him look as if he had died. But in truth, his real body would fall into deep sleep. He would wait for the talisman to absorb the power of the world on its own, and once it reached a certain level, he would wake up again. This was an incredibly strange cultivation method. It fused with the shaman tribe's spells, causing the great patriarch to be undying and indestructible. The shaman tribe's ninely tribe blood in him was incredibly thick, and this was because due to his undying and indestructible status in the shaman tribe, almost all the lords of ninely tribe had their bloodlines sucked away by him. However, he would not kill all of them. Every single time, he would leave behind some of them to give birth to the next generation. By doing so, he would be able to devour more of them. If eldest senior brother had not been saved by Master in the past, he would have died tragically in his hands. When the great patriarch woke up, Master, Western Sea Clan's Guru Lilong, and a mysterious powerful warrior fought against the great patriarch together. Only then did they manage to kill him in one fell swoop after his 9th death. It's a pity that Master's injuries have not recovered over the years, or else killing this person would not have been so difficult, and they would not have been unable to find the great patriarch's real body when he disappeared and fell into deep sleep. It would have been difficult for them to destroy him in the end. Youngest junior brother, your level of cultivation has surpassed that of Master, who is yet to recover from his injuries. Go and kill the great patriarch, find his real body, and take his blood of ninely tribe. This is the key to awakening eldest senior brother. Only when eldest senior brother's blood becomes even purer and with Huzi's protection can I cast the great heavenly ghost art and attract all the ghosts of the berserkers to attack the power of the immortal's enchanted vessel in eldest senior brother's body. I can't fight against the great patriarch with you. My body will dissipate during this period of time to attract the ghosts of the berserkers and prepare to cast the great heavenly ghost art, second senior brother said in a low voice. Su Ming nodded without any hesitation. In his memories, he was that mysterious person in the past, and his understanding towards the great patriarch was much greater than that of other people. If we can't find the great patriarch's hiding place, and we won't be able to obtain much of the blood of ninely tribe, then we can settle for the next best thing and go to Western Sea Clan. Western Sea Clan's Guru Lilong has a shaman python. When that python fought against the great patriarch in the past, it once swallowed the great patriarch's blood of ninely tribe. Then, I heard that it mutated. If we extract that mutated ninely tribe's blood, then while we might only have a 4/10 chance of awakening eldest senior brother, but if we can't find the great patriarch's hiding place, then we can also use that blood. Second senior brother hesitated for a moment before he spoke again. If we can get both the great patriarch and the shaman python's blood of ninely tribe, then what are our chances of awakening eldest senior brother? A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes as he asked calmly. If we can get both of them, then I have a 95% chance of awakening eldest senior brother. Second senior brother said gravely with a stern expression on his face. Su Ming nodded. Once he cast a deep look at the statue of his eldest senior brother, he looked at Hu Zi and second senior brother, and all of them saw the determination in each other's eyes. Youngest junior brother, remember to talk to Yu Xian and borrow that mutt. With it around, no one will be able to hurt you, second senior brother suddenly said, and even winked at Su Ming. Su Ming frowned and turned around with a slightly strange expression on his face before he walked toward Yu Xian's house. When morning arrived, Hu Zi hugged his eldest senior brother's statue and slept soundly, while second senior brother sat by his side, his body gradually distorting. At that moment, Su Ming brought the two mutt and a girl with a clear chuckle. They turned into 4 long arcs and left from the 9th summit. There was no way Yu Xian would not join in this sort of thing. As for the other mutt, it was the bald crane. It suddenly felt that its current form made it look even more impressive. As it flew, it barked to its heart's content, feeling very pleased with itself. Last week of this month, requesting recommendation votes. Requesting monthly votes. If you like this work, please come Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 809. 2012 is coming to an end, and a new year is coming. This is the last week. Can everyone please make Magic Beggar popular for once? There will be an explosion in the last week, and I need all kinds of tickets urgently. Everyone, please lend me a hand. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 810. Two people, two dogs, or perhaps it would be more accurate to say that they were a dragon and a bald crane. They turned into four long arcs in the sky and flew towards the Dead Sea beyond the island of South Morning, which was where Freezing Sky Clan was located. Su Ming remained calm all along the way, but he was constantly frowning. All of this was because of Yu Xian, who was sitting beside him, eating sunflower seeds with a lackadaisical look on her face. Su Ming could sense that Yu Xian's temperament was ever-changing. Sometimes she would be mischievous, sometimes she would be shy and naive, sometimes she would be muddled and ignorant, and sometimes she would be graceful and elegant. This lackadaisical look on her was another temperament Su Ming saw in her. Yu Xian was already beautiful to begin with, and with that lackadaisical look on her face, her beauty became even more eye-catching. If this continued, Su Ming might not have frowned, but the sounds of Yu Xian eating sunflower seeds continued echoing in the air, and even the moaning of the wind could not cover up the crunching sounds. Little dummy Su, you've been frowning all along the way. Let me guess, did the sound of me eating sunflower seeds disturb you? Yu Xian spat out a few sunflower seed shells, and the yellow mutt immediately ran over and swallowed them in one gulp. Behind it, the black dog that was the bald crane was just about to snatch them back, but when the mutt bared its teeth and glared at it, the black dog immediately put on an obsequious look and put on an expression that said, "You first." Su Ming ignored Yu Xian. He had a vague feeling that he could not see through the woman, and this feeling made him incredibly wary. At that moment, his expression remained as calm as ever. He turned into a long arc above the Dead Sea and looked ahead. There was a layer of purple fog there. That fog covered an incredibly large area, and it filled the entire area. That was Su Ming's destination, one of the 3 islands of South Morning, the place occupied by the shamans. Su Ming stopped outside the fog and looked at the thick purple fog. He fell into a moment of pensive silence. At that moment, when Yu Xian saw that Su Ming was treating her as if she did not exist again, she let out a light harumph, and a thought appeared in her head. Immediately, a sly look appeared in her eyes, and she let out a light cough. The moment he coughed, the ears of the mutt that was chewing on the melon seed skin perked up. It lifted its head to look at the fog, and when a look of disdain appeared on its face, it let out a low growl at the fog. The roar sounded like a dog's bark, but also like a dragon's roar. At first, it sounded normal, but after a moment, it suddenly shook the heavens and the earth, transforming into a deafening roar. The roar was like a violent gale sweeping through the area, and in an instant, it collided with the mist. The mist that filled the area immediately began to churn violently, and the roar echoed in the air. In the span of a breath, the seemingly thick fog immediately crumbled under the roar of the violent gust of wind. It was torn to pieces and tumbled backwards swiftly. Like a violent gust of wind sweeping away fallen leaves, the fog disappeared into thin air before Su Ming. But that was not all. Yu Xian's actions could be considered as helping Su Ming, but clearly that was not the case. Once the fog crumbled and tumbled backwards due to the mutt's low growl, a gigantic island was revealed on the surface of the sea. That island looked like a small piece of land. It was covered in lush greenery, and there were also several mountain ranges crisscrossing the land. A primitive and slightly damp air came crashing into Su Ming's face, but at that moment, as the fog tumbled backwards, the ground of the island was also swept up. As the ground rumbled, an innumerable amount of trees were uprooted and tumbled backwards along with the fog. If anyone lifted their heads to look from the ground of the island, they would be able to see that the sky was filled with rolling purple fog. The trees, earth, and even an innumerable amount of birds and beasts were all swept into the distance against their will. As the ground trembled, powerful presences swiftly spread out from the forest and the mountain range. They were filled with shock and anger, and loud shouts rose into the air. Which audacious fool dares to invade God of Shaman's Island? You just asking for death. How dare you trespass on God of Shaman's Island without permission? Die! As those shouts rang out, nearly 100 figures flew up from the ground. These people were dressed in beast skin robes and looked primitive, but the presence of the shamans was incredibly pure. There were all sorts of soul catchers, battle shamans, and spirit mediums among them, and most of them were medial shamans. There were also some with great presences, and they were ladder shamans. Yuxian placed her hands behind her back with a grin and stood by the side. She even whistled a few times, as if this had nothing to do with her. Su Ming had been thinking about whether he should barge in or fight against the great patriarch in secret. But now that Yuxian had interfered with his plans, it was impossible for him to sneak in. Su Ming knew that Yuxian had done this not only because of her personality, but also because she was angry that he had ignored her all along the way. She had said that he had caused some trouble for him, but Su Ming still did not spare her a glance and continued walking forward slowly. Dressed in white, Su Ming's long hair danced in the wind. His expression was aloof, and as he walked forward, the nearly 100 long arcs closed in on him. Yet right at the instant they closed in, the presence of life cultivation erupted from Su Ming's body with a bang. The eruption of that presence instantly caused the weather to change, and the space behind Su Ming to immediately distort. A powerful, mighty pressure spread out from his body along with his cultivation base and enveloped the entire world. "Stand down," Su Ming said flatly. His voice was not loud, but as the mighty pressure and his cultivation base spread out, his voice traveled into the hearts of the near 100 shamans, and it was as if an endless amount of thunder had erupted with a bang, causing their expressions to change drastically. Even the latter shamans coughed up blood at the same time. In fact, besides the latter shamans, all the others coughed up blood under Su Ming's voice and mighty pressure. Their hearts trembled, and their consciousness scattered. They fell from midair, and while they might not have died, they had fainted from the shock. The latter shamans gritted their teeth to maintain their consciousness, but they were bleeding from their eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. Shock and disbelief appeared on their faces, and they let out terrified screams. This isn't great completion in the Berserker soul realm. You, who are you? Almost at the same time, Su Ming spread out his mighty pressure. The presences of 4 end shamans immediately appeared on the god of Shaman's Island. When these 4 presences charged towards him, they turned into 4 figures before Su Ming. There were 3 men and 1 woman. 2 of them were old men, while the other man and woman were middle-aged. Once they appeared, their expressions were incredibly grave, and they stared at Su Ming as if they were facing a great enemy. Behind them were long arcs charging out from the god of Shaman's Island. In the blink of an eye, thousands of long arcs flashed in the sky and turned into shamans. Their faces were pale, but they stood in midair with gritted teeth and glared at Su Ming from the distance. Su Ming swept his gaze past the 4 end shamans and said flatly, "One shaman island actually has 4 end shamans." One of the 4 end shamans, an old man with a face full of brown spots, asked in a hoarse and low voice, "Who are you? How have we offended you on God of Shaman's Island? Please speak clearly." He was incredibly shocked. With just his mighty pressure alone, Su Ming could make nearly 100 shamans faint and even make those latter shamans bleed from their eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. He knew that he would not be able to do such a thing. Before Su Ming could speak, Yuxian immediately shouted out loud and clear, "Old man, don't you understand? Old man, you still don't understand? We're robbing. Do you know what robbing means? We're robbing." Excitement appeared on Yuxian's face. Her voice echoed in the air, causing the old end shaman and all the shamans behind him to have incredibly sour expressions. Robbing? The middle-aged female end shaman beside the old man let out a cold harumph, and a hint of killing intent appeared in her eyes. Su Ming's expression was indifferent. His gaze did not fall on the shamans before him, but was instead looking into the distance. There, he could see a mountain in the depths of the island. That mountain was incredibly tall, but strangely, while he could see at first glance, if he stared at it for a prolonged period of time, the mountain would disappear. The shaman tribe's sacred mountain. Su Ming was not unfamiliar with this land and this sacred mountain. He had come here before the catastrophe of the eastern wastelands. At that time, Hong Luo had woken up, and he had fought his first battle against Di Tian's clone outside the sacred mountain. He still remembered that there was a coffin on the shaman tribe's sacred mountain. Many years had passed, and when he came here again, the land of the past had turned into an island. Su Ming looked at the shaman tribe's sacred mountain in the distance, and he felt as if the world had changed. In silence, he walked forward. As he took a step forward, a gigantic pressure spread out with a bang, causing the air around Su Ming to instantly distort. At the instant that pressure spread out, the expressions of the 4 shamans on the island changed at the same time. They could clearly feel the terrifying pressure coming from Su Ming's body, and it was as if they continued standing in his way, they would be crushed. Before them, the latter shamans who were bleeding from their eyes, ears, nose, and mouth could no longer withstand the pressure. They coughed up blood and immediately fainted, their bodies falling to the ground. Almost at the instant these latter shamans fainted and Su Ming took a step forward, the 4 shamans let out low roars. The 4 of them spread out the ripples of their cultivation bases at the same time, turning into 4 divine thoughts that belonged to shamans that pressed down on Su Ming in an unseen manner to fight against the suffocating presence spreading out from his body. Su Ming's expression remained as calm as ever. He took another step forward, and this was his second step. At the instant his foot landed, his presence crashed into the divine thoughts of the 4 shamans. A soundless boom turned into waves of ripples that spread out in all directions. The 4 shamans coughed up blood at the same time and staggered 3 steps backwards. Disbelief appeared on their faces. When Su Ming took his third step, his presence in life cultivation pressed down on the 4 shamans and the thousands of shamans before him with a bang, as if it could topple mountains and overturn seas. The 4 shamans immediately coughed up blood again and fell back once more. This time, they were not the only ones retreating. The thousands of shamans behind them also fell back at the same time. With each step Su Ming took, they would take a step back, especially the 4 shamans. Their faces turned pale, and every single time Su Ming took a step forward, they would cough up blood as they retreated. There was no need for them to fight. Su Ming only needed to spread out his presence in life cultivation, and it would be enough to suppress everything. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 811. Sir, just who are you? The old shaman whose face was covered in brown spots coughed up blood and asked loudly as he retreated. His eyes were filled with red, and the shock in his heart could no longer be described. He managed to force all 4 of us back with just that mighty pressure, and our chi tumbled about, and we were injured. We can't even attack. Just what level of cultivation does he have? As the other 3 people's faces turned pale, the same thought rose in their hearts. In their eyes, the current Su Ming had already surpassed them by far too much. In fact, they did not even have the right to fight back under the mighty pressure before him. His name is Su Ming, and he's the god of berserkers. Can't you tell? Yu Xian asked sweetly. She had followed Su Ming here to play, and when she saw the shaman's expressions, she felt incredibly happy. Almost at the instant Yu Xian's words left her mouth, the expressions of the 4 shamans changed drastically. Even the thousands of shamans behind them let out cries of surprise. The 4 shamans had also completely given up on fighting back. God of Shaman's Island was not completely sealed off. They would occasionally venture out, and they already knew what had happened in eastern wastelands over the past year. The god of berserkers had appeared in the land where the immortals had descended, and after that, eastern wastelands tower had shone with a blood-red light that stretched 10,000 leagues. Hidden Dragon Sect was destroyed, Sky Mist Sect was destroyed, the 3 sects of Evil Sect were destroyed, and Great Leaf Immortal Sect had also disappeared from Eastern Wastelands. There was simply no way they could fight back against this sort of enemy, and they did not doubt Yu Xian's words. This was the only explanation that could describe how Su Ming's level of cultivation was so great that the 4 of them did not even have the right to fight back. Su Ming frowned and took a step forward. His body disappeared, and when he reappeared, he was already behind the thousands of shamans, heading towards the direction of the shamans' sacred mountain. He might have seemed slow, but in truth, with each step he took, he would cross 10,000 feet. As Su Ming left into the distance, Yu Xian did not follow him. Instead, she lifted her chin before the thousands of shamans, and, as she kicked the bearing mutt, she cast a sideways glance at the big black dog that was the bald crane, which had run to the ground at some point of time and was searching through the belongings of the nearly 100 people who had fainted. "You've offended someone. Do you know that? Someone offered 10 million crystal stones to buy the heads of all of you on this broken island." Yu Xian coughed and pretended to be mature as she slowly said, "But our Lord God of Berserkers is a kind person. He has no enmity with all of you, so he won't make things too difficult for all of you. How about this? All of you bring out all the items you have on you, and we'll see how much they're worth. As long as the difference isn't too great, we'll forget about this matter. However, Humph, if you dare to hide it and refuse to hand it over, then don't blame me for being ruthless." While Yu Xian was pretending to be old and experienced, the big black dog that was the bald crane bit off the locket from the neck of an unconscious shaman. When it heard Yu Xian's words, the bald crane was momentarily stunned before it blinked, and a look of understanding appeared on its face. "Darn it all, I've been working so hard here. So this is how we can rob others? That's right. Why should I search for them myself? I should make them hand it over on their own." The bald crane nodded solemnly, thinking to itself that it had learned another trick. At that moment, Su Ming did not bother himself with Yu Xian's actions. There were no longer any shamans blocking his path. He walked in midair, and the forest beneath him filled the area. At the end of his vision, the sacred mountain would occasionally appear and disappear. At the same time, as Su Ming got closer, a barely discernible sound of a heartbeat came from within the sacred mountain. Thump, 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 thump. As Su Ming got closer, that sound grew stronger. At the instant Su Ming was 10,000 feet away from the sacred mountain, a low roar came from within it. That roar shook the sky and earth, and the instant it traveled outwards, the entire god of shamans' island started trembling. Even the thousands of shamans before Yu Xian turned their heads around. There was no longer any terror on their faces, only fanaticism. Yu Xian blinked. As she kicked the mutt, she lifted her head and looked over. The low roar reverberated in the air, and with an intimidating presence, it turned into a wave of impact that charged towards Su Ming from all directions of the island. As the ground trembled, sand rumbled, and the leaves in the forest fell to the side as if a violent gust of wind had swept past them. Su Ming could sense that the low roar seemed to have come from the sacred mountain, but also from all directions of the island. As it surrounded him, it gave off a feeling that there was no end to it. Almost at the same time the roar reverberated in the air, a person appeared out of thin air from within the sacred mountain. That person's hair was a mess, and his upper body was bare. His lower body was dressed in beast skins, and in his hand was a gigantic bone staff. At the top of that bone staff were 3 small crimson snakes that were intertwined with each other. Their eyes were ghastly, and they hissed softly, letting out hissing sounds. When that person appeared, he took a step towards Su Ming and disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already several thousands of feet away. Then, he disappeared again and reappeared several thousands of feet away. When he disappeared for the 3rd time, a strange cackle reverberated in the air behind Su Ming. That person appeared behind him and lifted his withered left hand. All 5 of his fingers were covered in sharp, black nails, and he went to seize Su Ming's heart from the back. "Is this how you treat an old friend when you meet your guest?" Su Ming asked flatly. He did not dodge, but instead took a step backwards and rammed his back into the old man's left hand. When a muffled bang rang in the air, blood trickled out of the mouth of the person with the disheveled hair. He immediately fell back, and when he lifted his head, he revealed a face covered in wrinkles under his messy hair. It was an incredibly old face, as if he had just crawled out of a coffin. However, his eyes were incredibly bright, and there was even the shadow of a crescent moon shining in them. His left hand was trembling slightly at that moment. The 5 black nails on it were all broken, and blood was flowing out of them. Su Ming turned around unhurriedly and looked towards the old man. His gaze instantly met the old man's. Su Ming's calmness and the old man's age seemed to have caused the world around them to freeze for a moment. "I've lived for a long time, and I've seen far too many people. I don't have much of an impression of you, boy. But I remember now, when I sent one of my clones to fight outside Sky Mist Barrier, you were a young berserker who was beside me." The old man was naturally the great patriarch who practiced the art of 9 deaths. His voice was hoarse, as if his bones were rubbing against each other, and would cause anyone who heard it to feel incredibly uncomfortable. As he spoke, he even grinned, revealing his incomplete teeth that had turned yellow and black. "I originally wanted to choose to fall asleep, but before I fell asleep, I should have eaten your flesh and blood. It should have allowed me to sleep even better." The old man licked his lips and swung the bone staff in his hand before him. Immediately, a ball of black fog spread out from the bone staff. As that fog tumbled about, it turned into a gigantic python that charged towards Su Ming with a roar. The old man swung his bone staff once again, and a dozen something balls of fog manifested in succession before turning into a dozen something gigantic pythons. They swept through the sky and earth, and with the black fog in their midst, they charged towards Su Ming with low growls from all directions. Once he finished doing all this, the old man bit the tip of his tongue and coughed up a mouthful of blood. His blood was black, but it had a rotten stench to it. Once he coughed it out, it instantly exploded and turned into thousands of red silk insects that spread out like a red cloud. That was not the end. Once the old man finished doing all this, he lifted his left hand and swiftly formed a seal before him. Every single time 2 fingers on his dried-up left hand touched each other, the sky would rumble. In the midst of those rumbles, bolts of lightning sliced through the sky in long arcs, but they did not descend on the ground. Instead, they flashed in midair as if they had frozen. In the blink of an eye, more than 100 bolts of lightning froze in midair as they sliced through the sky, as if they had been frozen. As these bolts of lightning intersected with each other, they formed the outline of a gigantic battle axe. That battle axe was several thousands of feet big, and it was formed by lightning in midair. When the old man lifted his left hand and pointed towards the sky, it immediately charged towards Su Ming with a loud bang. "Don't you remember me, Su?" With an indifferent expression on his face, Su Ming walked slowly towards the old man. As he walked forward, the dozen-something pythons made of black fog around him roared and charged towards him. But at the instant they closed in on Su Ming, cracking sounds immediately came from their bodies, and all of them turned into ice statues. As they trembled, they shattered into pieces and crumbled. When Su Ming's foot landed on the ground, the hundreds to thousands of blood threads that were formed by the old man's blood closed in on him with a piercing whistle. The blood threads were incredibly sharp, and when they were about to close in on Su Ming, he took a step forward and shot through the blood threads. Once he shot through them, the blood threads instantly twisted and turned into ice that fell from the sky. All of this had happened in less than the span of 3 breaths. Almost at the moment he finished speaking, he was already standing before the old man. The old man's expression changed, and his pupils shrank. Just as he was about to retreat, Su Ming lifted his left hand and seized the old man's neck. "Now, do you remember who I am?" Su Ming's words were flat. When he spoke, the sky rumbled, and the lightning battle axe came charging towards him with a bang. But at the instant it closed in, the killing sword appeared in Su Ming's right hand. Once he held it in his hand, he sliced at the battle axe diagonally. With a bang, the lightning battle axe shattered. At the same time, Su Ming squeezed the old man's neck with his left hand. This is the first death. When Su Ming said those words flatly, the destructive power Su Ming sent into the old man's body rushed into him, and he shattered. Almost at the instant, the great shaman's body shattered and turned into ashes. An even stronger presence erupted from the spot where he died. The old man's body appeared out of thin air once again, but this time he was no longer as old as before. It doesn't matter who you are. Before the great patriarch could finish speaking, Su Ming swung the killing sword in his right hand. As the killing sword let out an excited and bloodthirsty sword whistle, it sliced through the old man's neck. However, at the same time his head was cut off, the old man's body crumbled once again. "This is the second death," Su Ming said calmly. "I am in urgent need of recommendation tickets. If you like this work, please come to Chidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation." You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.